Good to be here with you on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you were with us, and we have got a lot to get to here on the show. Of course, it is mock draft season. Tis the season for mock draft, so we'll get to that. Do we get presents with mock draft season?
We should get something, because I mean, it used to be, Kevin, it was with Mel Kiper and he had Time Shea. Now, anybody who got a platform that talk about NFL, Maurice Jones-Drew, Willie McGinnis, Laura Rutledge, anybody that talks about the NFL is going to have a mock draft. It's going to be mock draft 11.0 by the time the draft actually comes.
Absolutely. So we will get to that coming up just a little bit. We'll look at the Falcons and Jags here. We'll take the 100-foot view because we are still a ways away, obviously, from the draft. We'll hear from Brooks Austin this hour. Dogs Daily on SI, Georgia National Champions. Just exactly how good was this team? And, of course, Brooks does an excellent job with breakdowns of film. Well, who are some of these guys that are most pro-ready that have announced for the NFL draft? We'll talk about that with Brooks coming up. Also, Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC podcast. A lot going on in college football with the transfer portal, NIL rules. Are there any rules? Does it need to be reined in? We'll talk to Chris Gordy about that. Also, Orson Charles, former Georgia tight end, going to join us. Brock Bowers, how good is that young man as a freshman? And, of course, his thoughts on Georgia winning the national championship. Final hour of the show, John Shipley going to join us with a Jaguar report. What in the world are the Jags doing at head coach? They've got the number one pick. Again, could they literally pick anybody and not screw this thing up? And at 5:35, Ben's got Troop Talk this week. He sits down with Eddie Rojas of the Gator Collective. And the Gator Collective, one of now what we're seeing in a lot of schools pop up, a organization not affiliated with the school, branded with the school in some way, shape, or form, but not affiliated with the school, kind of bringing boosters together for the purposes of name, image, and likeness. So Ben will talk to Eddie Rojas of the Gator Collective. Looking forward to that conversation. But Ben, Mel Kiper draft 1.0 is out. He's got the Jags taking Aiden Hutchinson, number one. And I told Christian this earlier. I said the beauty about mock drafts, and especially when it's mock draft 1.0, is if Mel Kiper, Todd McShay say Aiden Hutchinson's going number one, pretty good guess by the time 4 months rolls around and we get to the draft, Aiden Hutchinson will not be going number one. Again, was Baker Mayfield number one on mock draft 1.0? I don't think so. Was Trevor Lawrence mock draft first round 1.0? He might have been, but I think there was some thoughts of, would the Jags go quarterback? Would they go somewhere else potentially that far out? So mock draft 1.0 Jags and Aiden Hutchinson.
Wow. I'm just going to go ahead and say about Aiden Hutchinson, Kevin. I don't know if you did. I didn't hear anything about him until they beat Ohio State. Like, I didn't know nothing about it. And mind you,
how much did you hear after he got whooped?
Exactly. In my neck of the woods, obviously, I'm very, very biased because I'm in, SEC, ACC, Sun Belt, and SoCon country. So I think when you think about a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, how much did he benefit? Because this is finally the Michigan team that got over the hump, won the Big Ten, dominated Ohio State. Because this is the thing about Hutchinson. Now, obviously, he was an Army All-American coming out of high school, and a lot of these guys he's going up against now went up against them in high school. Well, it was much of the same. And another guy who could potentially be a number one pick, and a guy who was picked to be the number one pick when he came out, Kayvon Thibodeau. He was on some sports show talking trash about how, at Oregon they prepare us for, they prepare me for the next level better than Alabama did. Plus, I dominated guys. Well, Kevin, as you and BJ have, shown me, well, they got tape. And Kayvon, you didn't look much better than Aiden Hutchinson. The problem is pass rushers are at a premium. If you can't get a quarterback, you try to get a pass rusher. Either you want the guy behind the center controlling the game, or you want a guy chasing them that could just destroy any type of game plan. This thing about Aiden Hutchinson, though, good player. And I'm not saying he's not a good player. And look, and I know, Kevin, we've been talking about Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper was supposed to be out of the business. He said, if Mr. Casey Clausen doesn't make it, I will quit. Well, that quote came and gone. And I know we have to, when you're on TV as much as he is, he's going to say a whole bunch of things. You can't quote him or take it to the bank. It's like us with our game picks. Sure to go wrong. Right. Well, Mel Kiper has been doing it a long time. But Kevin, just like I know, these tackles that's coming into the NFL that you went up against, these are going to be top picks. They're not the best tackles in the league. The best tackles in the league, they reside in the National Football League. Now, could Aiden Hutchinson go and have a big time, rookie season? Yes, but I think about the Jacksonville Jaguars team that in the last 5 years, they've drafted Chason, they drafted Josh Allen, Tavon Bryant. Now you're talking about being able to add a potential Aiden Hutchinson. Now, look, I'm not mad at him. This is not criticism of the player himself. I want him to go as high as he can go. But Kevin, you know, just like I know, now the world is going to look at this kid. This kid's going to be number one out of everybody in the draft. Is Aiden Hutchinson a better defensive end than Derek Stingley Jr. as a cornerback? I don't know. But Kevin, when you got a team like the Jags that needs so much, and they're very, very young, hopefully they get a healthy Travis Etienne in 2022. A team that they improved from a year ago. They still got no one overall pick, but they improved. You know, they won multiple games this year. But I just think for me, I judge Aiden Hutchinson on big time competition, and every time he went up against and I'm not saying Ohio State isn't, he got dominated. He didn't get beat up. He got dominated.
Right.
So look, it is one game. I mean, it's hard to judge anybody against Alabama, Georgia, because they beat each other. They only two beat. Well, I was Texas A&M beat Alabama, but yes, yeah. Kevin, I just think that we've seen enough of this, though, right? We've seen enough that with this, here come the hype train. Now, Josh Allen, and I'm talking not the Josh Allen in Jacksonville, the Josh Allen in Buffalo. I was wrong about him, so I'm gonna miss, especially with them quarterbacks. But the thing about Aiden Hutchinson, he's built to get after the passer, and I don't know how good these tackles, Evan Neal's of the world, how good they're gonna end up. And, obviously when you think about Warren McClendon, I hope he's going to end up a potential first-round pick. You didn't even – if Aiden Hutchinson's name wasn't called before the game, you wouldn't even know he was. And that happens. But the best of them, they should find a way to at least make a couple of plays that didn't happen. We'll see. But, obviously, Kevin, that hype train is real.
It's mock draft 1.0. So, again, a lot could change. But, yeah, I think the Jags, and we'll get to this in just a little bit, they have a lot of needs. Not necessarily just defensive line, defensive end type guys there, but he did go on. I heard Mel Kiper talk about this. He has the Falcons taking Derek Stingley Jr., which would be interesting. Which would be interesting because that would be 3 picks in the last 3 years in the first or second round where they've gone defensive back. Obviously, you had AJ Terrell, you had Richie Grant, second rounder last year out of Central Florida, and then you would take yet another defensive back potentially in the first round. I'd be 2 DBs in the first round in the last 3 drafts. Is that a nice idea, Ben? Or do you think the Falcons, with all their needs, are saying, let's go get a guy in the back end? Because as you said, I could get the best corner. I could get Dion and Dion Jr., right? And say, those are my 2 corners. And if the Falcons cannot get to the quarterback and create pressure, it's not going to matter, right?
Yeah.
They simply can't stand back there and cover all day. So do you think that's an interesting kind of mock to put that out there? You think the Falcons would actually be interested in Derek Stingley, given some other needs there in that first round?
I think they will because, Kevin, I think with this pick, this is what, ROI, return on investment. You think about AJ Terrell, it was a questionable pick when he did it, but who made the biggest stride in the second year? That would be AJ Terrell. And you mentioned it. Am I going to get D linemen to go to that? It's almost like D linemen aren't allowed to be good if they go to Atlanta first round. I'm not even going to, or Jamal Anderson, the other Jamal Anderson, the one from Arkansas. Yeah. So I just think that, and look at their division. That's what they're really doing. Hey man, if Michael Thomas going to be back next year, for them Saints. You talk about what they're doing down there in Tampa Bay with Mike Evans, and who knows who's going to be on the other side, but you got to deal with that. And I think one of the hardest position not named quarterback is the cornerback position. You get an AJ Terrell, you get a Derek Stingley, you got 2 guys still under rookie deals that you still can hopefully build, gel with. So, and Kevin, Atlanta needs a lot. Atlanta needs a lot. Running back. They're not going to get no first round pick on a running back. You talk about an old lineman. Well, they've already got they got 2 first round picks in the same draft. You talk about D linemen. I don't know if nobody stands out in this D line draft like they're not going to get a linebacker. I just don't see it. So I think the safest pick, because of how fast AJ Terrell has progressed, I think you do get a Derek Stingley because, Kevin, just like I know, 3 years ago, Derek Stingley was the number 1 cornerback in the country. He was a true freshman. Well, because of rules, he had to stay there 2 years. He had to stay there for 2 more years. So Derek Stingley in Atlanta, I think that's a nice pick to considering how many needs you have to fill with Atlanta.
Yeah, and again, this is all well out. We haven't even gotten to the the senior bowl hasn't happened yet. Yeah. We haven't gotten to the combine. We haven't gotten a chance to do some of those things that certainly can change some minds, some draft boards out there as well. I just thought it was, interesting given the Falcons' needs that, well, yeah, they probably could take a corner. That wouldn't jump off the list as one of the top 2 or 3 positions on the field that they really could use some top flight help there on that football team. But I know that a lot of these early mock drafts I've seen, everybody has said the draft gets interesting for them with Atlanta because they just don't know what Atlanta is going to do because there's so many options for them. Obviously, Jacksonville can do a number of things, but you get to Atlanta, it's like, are you done with Matt Ryan? Because if you think you are, would you take the best quarterback you can get and let him sit for a year? You know what I mean? It's like, if you think Matt has got one more year, do you go ahead and draft one now? Or do you say, well, we think maybe a quarterback's next year, but God forbid, I mean, I say this, but front offices say this way, God forbid the Falcons are better and go 10, 11 wins or something. And, well, now you're picking at the mid to bottom of the first round, and you may not be able to get one of those guys that you thought you might get to replace Matt Ryan. So very interesting to see. I think the Falcons, I don't say the first round hinges on that, but at number 8, a lot of people right now seem to be very lost as to what the Falcons could potentially do here in this upcoming draft.
And rightfully so. I mean, Kevin, when you think about this Falcons team, they got so many holes to fill. Their best running back play receiver, right? When you talk about a guy like Kyle Pitts, obviously he was able to fit the bill, but he had 1 touchdown. When you talk about this defense, most people don't even know who Deion Jones is anymore. He just started a middle linebacker who, I just think that when it comes to this team, and mind you, this is just a draft. Obviously, Atlanta's going to hopefully address some things in free agency as well. But I would think that Derek Stingley Jr. is a guy that has been relevant as of late. He's not a Johnny come lately. He might have been not named Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow might have been the best player on that team. 3 years ago in LSU. So I do think it's a safe pick because, he understands the position. Because, Kevin, if you do get a quarterback that's going to wait, that's going to, do we start that? Oh, if you get him in the first round when Matty Ice ain't playing, what do you pull him? I think they're going to go more free agency with a quarterback that understands or, maybe they wait till next year. Matty Ice, he got a lot of money on the books, man. And people don't want to pick that up, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Cam says 2 second-round picks, maybe you go QB.
And I'm gonna say this. I know people don't like it. When you think about Kirk Cousins got drafted the same year RG3. They got RG3 in the first round. They got Kirk Cousins like the 4th round. People thought it's not gonna work. Well, they knew that RG3 could potentially, get hurt, and you see how Kirk Cousins' career has gone on. Who's to say that, Kevin? I mean, go out there and get 2. I mean, because we forget. I can't even think of his name. Josh Rosen. It's the freaking backup. So who knows? You might and Felipe Franks is the 3rd string. You might have a couple of quarterbacks already on your roster, which most teams, they want to build from within because they know the culture already, they know the offense, but we'll see.
Yeah, Josh Rosen, first round pick's been, I think he needs another team to be on.
Him and Ryan Fitzpatrick, they trying to battle for see who going to play for all 32 teams before their career's over.
Yeah, Adam Fisher sending us a note, Ben, it says Derek Stingley and AJ Terrell will be a really good quarterback.
Beautiful team.
I'm not saying they wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they wouldn't be. I'm saying, would that be a surprise pick given some of the other needs? Like, hey, if you're going to keep Matt Ryan, you kind of need him to stand upright. And he was the most hit quarterback in the National Football League this year. Your running game was non-existent. Right? You went out and said, hey, Mike Davis, you're going to be the man. You didn't even start at some points. You got beat out by a hybrid wide receiver at running back. You got, again, you don't, my estimation, you don't address running back in the first round, but nevertheless, offensive lineman, running back. If you have no idea what's going to happen at wide receiver, you probably need to go get another one.
You need a D lineman. I mean, we trying to avoid the inevitable. Yeah. Atlanta needs Aiden Hutchinson. They need Kayvon Thibodeau. They need. Now, I will say this. I mean, do you want to go out there and get a Nakobe Dean? Because he's that type of player. When you look at what Michael Parsons meant to a Dallas Cowboy defense. I know we're gonna get to it later about do you draft need or best available. When you in that top 10, Kevin, it's iffy because top 10 picks in football are like top 10 picks in basketball. You expect those guys to pan out. Most of the time they don't, but you expect those guys to be, opening day starters.
Yeah, with much draft capital as you're using to take those guys, they got to work out. We've got more to come. We'll take a look at what Atlanta and Jacksonville needs, obviously, in the draft. 2 top 10 picks between those 2 teams. They've got Jags at 1, Falcons at 8. We'll take a look at that when we return. Brooks Austin going to join us in about 20 minutes here on 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you're making us a part of your day. Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI. He's going to join us in about 15 minutes here on the show. We'll talk about Georgia winning the national championship. Brooks does a great job with film study as well. We'll find out who are some of the dogs that are going to excel at the next level out of this 2021 football team. He'll join us in just a little bit. But Mel Kiper's mock draft 1.0 out. Ben, obviously a lot of speculation about who needs what. Let's look at Atlanta and Jacksonville and kind of what their big needs are going here into the draft. Let's start there with the Falcons. Obviously, D-line, we talked about linebacker, offensive lineman. I put quarterback as a question mark. I don't know if it's an overall need because I think Matt Ryan's still got – I think he's got more than one good year left. I mean, this was the first year in a decade, Ben, that he did not throw for over 4,000 yards. So he almost had a string of a decade straight of 4,000-yard seasons. And I don't think I think our good friend Cody Queen said only like one other quarterback had even done that. I think it was Drew Brees. He missed it by like 34 yards. So he still got – and that was with the offensive line. It was horrible. Couldn't block. He got hit more than anybody in the draft. So I don't know if quarterback's an overwhelming need, but as you look at Atlanta, picking at 8, we kind of talked about this with Derek Stingley, just not even thinking about players. If you're looking at just the roster, what's the one position group you think that's got to be addressed or it's going to be bad?
Oh, man. I know it's crazy, even though because I know Matty Ice went out there and like did some. I think it's wide receiver, Kevin. Because the thing about it is, I mean, Kyle Pitts was, he was force fed. I mean, because you don't have, I think they're going to move on for Calvin Ridley. I mean, because obviously they support him in what he's doing, but he's hurting the team because you are number one guy. You got to have a guy on the outside that's big, because the one thing Matty Ice has always had, he had Roddy White. He talking about Julio Jones. He has neither one of those guys now. So I do think you're going to want to either you're going to have to get a wide receiver because it makes life easy. A number one receiver makes life easy for a quarterback because that's who you can depend on. They know they're going to get double coverage and they're going to make life better for everybody around them. But I will say, when you think about this Falcons team, they need a running back. They don't need an elite one, but they need Jerick McKinnon. And I know Jerick McKinnon right now is playing for the 49ers, and obviously he's in that Kyle Shanahan offense. Jerick McKinnon ain't the most, dynamic runner, good running back, but it's the stability he provides. Can catch the ball in the backfield, can run in between the tackles. The thing about the Falcons is, it's like if it's 3rd and 2, we because number one, Cordell Patterson is not a running back. Now he does it, but that's not what he does. Mike Davis scored the last game of the season. He was just as surprised as everybody. He like, you scored? Yeah, man, because so I do think, Kevin, wide receiver is a huge need because that's what we know Atlanta for, to throw the football. They ain't had a solid running back since Devonta Freeman? And when I say solid, I'm talking about a guy that's going to give you quality touches, going to be able to kind of seal a game if you up by 6 or 4 and you got to do a 4-minute drive. So I think with Atlanta, wide receiver, because while Kyle Pitts is giving you production, he gave you 1 touchdown. And I think that if you're not affecting the scoreboard, you're affecting the box score, but not the scoreboard. He's going to need some help. Got to get a running back. And unfortunately, Atlanta's going to have to get a D lineman. It's almost like you start saying to yourself, what is it about Atlanta that the D lineman it just don't work out? John Abraham name comes all the time.
Well, I'm saying, but anymore in the NFL, you mentioned 2 position groups. You don't anymore. Unless they're just really special. Yeah. You don't do linebackers and running backs in the first round.
No, unless it's a Luke Kuechly, Micah Parsons, right, or, a Patrick Willis. Yeah. But what I'm saying is too, Kevin, this is the thing. The draft is something that I can kind of develop a little bit. Like AJ Terrell, Derek Stingley, we can develop him a little bit, but they're going to start. So what you really ask yourself is, who can we get that could be a key contributor while also being a rookie? There was a lot of question marks. But when Kyle Pitts went where he went, people are because one, he went the highest ever, but he's replacing Julio. Let's call it what it is. Gave you production, but not the touchdowns. What they were saying about Julio towards the end, always going to give you yards, not the touchdowns. And now, Kevin, the O-line, I don't know. The O-line is that's another thing. Because Matty Ice, he's tough, man. He's going to get up off the ground. But Matty Ice, he's closer to 40 than 30. Because he ain't aging backwards.
You're right.
So I just think that when you think about this Falcons team, yes. What's crazy, Kevin? It's almost like, listen, pick a position group, spin a wheel, whatever it land on. Let's just get that because you don't really have a building block. Like, who is my building block on defense? AJ Terrell? Who is my building block on offense? Kyle Pitts? That's the scary part. If your building block ain't a left tackle on offense or a defensive end or a linebacker on defense, it's going to be a long season, probably even next year, too.
I didn't want to clarify. I didn't say linebacker, middle linebackers.
Yeah, middle linebacker. Yeah, outside linebackers. Yeah. I mean, if you can get, but see, once again, with DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, I don't see nobody in this draft like that. Yeah. And unfortunately, we like, why y'all got to compare them to the greatest? Because these guys started day one, and they're going to hear their names called again.
One interesting thing before we move over to Jacksonville here, Ben, was, again, I agree with what you said. The Falcons are going to be all in with Calvin Ridley, say, look, mental health, take your time, get better, do what you got to do. That's the humanitarian side of it. The business side says, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do we need to move on?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to? Because, again, I think the Falcons went over half the season without him. I know it had an impact on their team. He knows it had an impact on the team. Obviously, he does that, but he obviously handled mental health. No question. But at one point, do the Falcons say, as you said, we got to get somebody that can play? I mean, we appreciate you working, but we are down a player. We are down a receiver. We are down a big part of our offense because we have, and they said themselves, we have no clue what's going on with Calvin Ridley in terms of him coming back. He's getting help. He's doing that. But I think it was before the last game.
Mm-hmm.
They asked several Falcons folks about that, including Arthur Smith, head coach, and he said, nothing's changed. So if nothing's changed then, what's to say anything's going to change by the draft? Is anything going to change by the preseason? Is he ever going to come back and play football? Obviously, that's the least important thing. But if you're running an organization, that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to help this guy, but if he's not playing again, I've got to move on the field. And if you're the Falcons, they've had a history. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley,
mm-hmm.
Kyle Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
They will move up, and they will make moves to get pass catchers in the first round.
It's kind of like...
Would you do it with the uncertainty?
No, I couldn't, because Kevin, like it's one of those things to where, and make no mistake about it. This is a different NFL we talk about. We live in a more of a PC culture now, to where you have to kind of be sensitive to the mental health side because you don't want to seem insensitive to it. You might not understand it fully, but how many number one receivers are not out there and it ain't because they injured? That would be Ridley. He's the only one. How many guys are coming up on a second contract that would do this? Only Ridley. And what really is doing is, I mean, if you are Atlanta, like you say, look, it's the most important thing because we want to honor him, but it's hurting us. And it's like this, Kevin. Look, if we're in a band, right, and you're the lead singer, and I'm the drummer, and right before it's time, hey Ben, you got to be lead singer. What? And now listen. Now, do I know the songs? Yeah. Do I know when the solo? Yeah. But I'm not. I can sing, but I'm not the guy. I think what happened was, think about this. Everybody had to go wherever you were, you moved up. You went to number 3, you went number 2. Number 2, number 1. And I think what it is I think you make a good point. Arthur Blank is like, look, I'm going to say the right things, man, because everything is clickbait. Now, behind the scenes, I'm like, what in the world? Because you put us so I do think they got to move on for Ridley. You got to replace him with that type of production. I don't know if you want to pay that type of money because some of these guys coming up on some big deals. You don't want to, wide receivers getting paid like quarterbacks. But yeah, Kevin, I do think you got to move on from him because who's to say doesn't happen in 2022? And 2022 is going to be, think about it, really want to talk to you, man. Because at the end of the day, this is what you do. And I respect it, but no, we got to run a business, and I can't run a business like that.
All right, over to Jacksonville. Obviously, they took the quarterback last year in Trevor Lawrence. We just said Mel Kiper mock draft 1.0 says Aiden Hutchinson. I think the Jags obviously have interior D-line issues, offensive line issues. I think they have, despite the fact they've drafted wide receivers, I think they still have wide receiver issues. I wanted to add running back on there, but again, I think James Robinson was misused. Obviously, they missed Travis Etienne, who never got to play because of the torn ACL. So I don't know if that's necessarily a weakness or they just were misused and injured at that position. And when guys come back, they'll be much better. But where do you see Jacksonville? I know BJ's not here, but I'll speak for him because he's told me this off the air. He goes, if I'm Jacksonville, I'm taking Neal from Alabama. I don't care. Give me a lockdown offensive lineman to protect my quarterback, and I can figure it out from there. What say you?
I agree. I couldn't agree wholeheartedly. When you talk about a left tackle like Neal, you already know, the school he's coming from. Check. The position he's always played. Check. And you got Jawan Taylor, who's still on a rookie deal on the right side. I give you 2 words. Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow as a rookie, he missed the whole season because he didn't have an O-line. When you give him one, they win the freaking AFC North. All I'm saying is you have to protect the franchise. Now, people are going to say, what about the wide receivers? You can address that in free agency. When people here getting because you got a bunch of young receivers who need direction from an OG, from a wide receiver that's been around, that want to come in and be that alpha dog. But once again, Kevin, this is like Atlanta South. Because once again, you got a lot of holes, a lot. And I know they tried to address some holes last year. They got some nice free agents last year, but it didn't show on the scoreboard. It didn't show in the win column. So I do think you get you a left tackle, you live with the result, you go out there and you address other things in the rest of the draft. Because if you get Aiden Hutchinson, he's a good player, but how much does he impact your team right now? With a Chase Young gonna come off the bench, and Josh Allen obviously is penciled in as a starter. Tavon Bryan, I mean, only thing saving him is the fact that he was a first round pick. So yes, get Evan Neal, live with the result, prove Balky that you can go out there and make quality decisions. Because right now, their GM needs to prove that he knows what the hell he's doing. Because right now, outside of Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, and maybe a couple of moves here and there, I wouldn't trust Balky running my franchise right now.
And we'll talk to John Shipley, the Jaguar Report, coming up at the final hour of the program. When we come back, Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI, will join us for Talking Dogs, national champions, and more with him next here on 3 and Out. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us and joining us here on the program. Good friend from Dogs Daily on SI, Brooks Austin, joining us. Brooks, we talked to you a week ago Monday. So what's new?
Nothing much, man. Just hanging out, just chilling. It's off-season time, but I mean, a lot's new. I think probably 20 different roster changes between NFL draft declarations and transfer portal entries, like things like that. So I think you had quite a bit of roster shuffling and even some coaching shuffling over the last week since we've talked, I think.
Hey, and I think Georgia won the national championship. You left that part out, of course.
Oh yeah, I think that too. Have we not talked since then?
No, we talked the day of the game. We have not talked since then. So
it's been a blur. It's been a 10-day blur, honestly. I mean, the honest January just it's like it's the 19th already. It's like, what?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was in San Antonio from like the 4th through the 10th, and then the 10th you had the national title game, and the last week, celebration's it's been nuts, man. But I guess that's what happens when business is good in terms of winning ball games.
I was going to say, Brooks, what do you see as, obviously we know what it did for the fan base and you can see that, but what do you think is the effect of Georgia winning the national championship on that program outside of the obvious, which is obviously Georgia fans get that 41-year monkey off their back? What is the effect of them finally breaking through and winning it do for that program?
Just kind of the final notch on the belt, right? Just the final box left to check for this regime and what they're doing right now at Georgia. Whether it was Ohio State, Ryan Day coming to Atlanta and recruiting guys like Kojo Antwi, or whether it's Dabo Swinney coming to Atlanta and recruiting guys like Barrett Carter, or whether it's Nick Saban coming to Georgia and recruiting guys like Will Anderson. Most of those recruitment battles, they end with one final counter recruitment point against Georgia in years past. Well, they don't win titles. They don't down there. That's not what they've done. They haven't done that since 1981. What makes you think you're going to win a title down there? And all these other schools have been counter recruiting with that one thing left, because that's all they had left. They didn't have the NFL because Kirby Smart's breaking draft records every year at Georgia. They're producing them at an ultimate rate. You don't have a lack of brand awareness because Georgia is a national brand. People will pay attention to your football games when you go there. The last argumentative point that anybody had in terms of counter recruiting against Georgia was the chip, and now they got one. So it's full gas, no brakes at this point. I said yesterday on the radio, this is not the culmination of it's both the culmination of a 41-year drought and the coronation of what is yet to come for this Georgia football program, in my opinion.
And Brooks, I mean, 6 years though. I mean, when Kirby Smart gets the job, obviously it was, Mark Richt, Kirby Smart. This 6-year run, two national championship appearances, one national championship win, one SEC championship. You talk about the recruiting, you talk about the infrastructure, you talk about the coaching tree. You look at what Mel Tucker did at Michigan State, breaking records. You look at the fact that you got Dan Lanning staying there and coaching before he goes to Oregon. I mean, how much pressure, which I know that Kirby loves, but how much more pressure is Kirby putting on himself saying, look, I know that the stakes were already high, but now that the return on investment happened 6 years later, what else can he do to kind of do that, for that encore?
Yeah, sometimes Sam Pittman gets left out on that list of coaching on the coaching tree as well. So it's getting pretty strong right now under Kirby Smart. Some real strong success stories. But nah, dude, I also said yesterday, this guy's a psycho. Like, he's a psycho in all the great ways. Like, when it comes to the most elite of elite, whether it's coaching, whether it's Fortune 500 companies, whatever it is, CEOs, whatever it is, the most elite are always psychotic about the way it is that they grind about their business. And even when success comes, almost sometimes it makes them work even harder. That's what made Saban so great. It's what's made Saban great up until his, early 70s, like he's in now. Kirby Smart got back home, and as soon as recruiting was available, he took helicopters all over North Georgia. He's in South Georgia today. Like, the dude does not stop. He doesn't want to stop. And in fact, I think this really dumped gas on the fire that was him. I mean, the pressure isn't there as much anymore, but he's more of a self-critic than anything, like all the greats are. And I think that's going to remain the same in terms of a willingness to strive for, perfection in terms of coaching. That's what he does.
Brooks Austin joining us here on 3 and Out. And Brooks, you mentioned all the comings and goings there at Georgia. Obviously, Dan Lanning is out. I guess before we get to the on the field stuff, Is there a concern that Todd Monken is he still being courted by NFL potential gigs? And on the defensive coordinator side, is that as simple as just tell Will you're no longer an analyst and just slide over to be the DC? Or how do you think that goes down?
You know, I don't know. I don't think they're rushing to label the defensive coordinator position. I think there's a trilogy of minds right there when it comes to the defensive room at Georgia right now. And I think they all see each other as equals. I think that's the way they're approaching it, right? In terms of Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart, and Will Muschamp. That's the way they're going to have to balance it. They're going to keep all three of them. They have to understand that each one of them is equally as important to the overall picture as the other. As far as Todd Monken goes, the longer we get closer, like the closer we get to full NFL offseason, because that's where he's going. If he goes anywhere, I would imagine he's going back to the NFL as an offensive coordinator, maybe for a defensive head coach, right? Like, for example, let's say once the coaching carousel kind of comes to a halt and coaches are in their specific spots, I'm just throwing a name out here. If Dan Quinn gets hired as a head coach and he's an offensive coordinator, I don't know why, and has a good quarterback situation wherever he lands as a head coach, because he is getting interviews. It's that type of situation. Defensive head coach needs a real strong offensive mind. That's the position I think Monken might leave for. But again, that's not gonna come about until the NFL dust settles and all those jobs are finalized in terms of head coaching positions.
Brooks, one thing about what we experienced last Monday was, I know you got Stetson Bennett, which might arguably be the best story in college football if you weigh everything, but I saw a myth that was killed as well. We thought that in order to beat Alabama, you had to have a Deshaun Watson, a Trevor Lawrence, a Joe Burrow, and I'm not saying he did it on his own, but Stetson Bennett, man, to come back from that, I'm still trying to figure out what that was. Did the fumble? Did it not a fumble? But to go 4 for 4, 2 touchdowns down the stretch with that big throw, just talk about the legacy of Stetson Bennett. We understand the legend that is him. Serving up hot meals at the drive-thru. But talk about the legacy that is of Stetson Bennett at this point.
So I think when it comes to the legacy of a national title winning team, I think first and foremost, you have to start with the defense. Before we get into any of this, you had to have a Deshaun Watson. You had to have a Joe Burrow. Like, I still think that's true. Okay. Overall, I still think that is more than likely going to be the case moving forward in college football, unless you have the best defense we've seen in 2 decades. Like, if that's what you've got, then yeah, you can have a quote unquote game manager at the quarterback position. That's all possible. Because I'll tell you this much, Ben, I'm looking at it right now. He threw the ball 26 times in the national title game. That's the first time in the last 15 college football playoff games that Alabama has played where their opponent has not had to throw the ball at least 39 times. Okay. That doesn't happen. History is going to tell you that's not going to happen again. So the next time you see them in the playoffs, I still think you're going to have to throw it 35 times and throw for more than 300 yards and be efficient through the air. I think that's what football is nowadays. Unless, again, you have the best defense we've seen in 2 decades. Now, as far as the legacy comment goes, there is no bigger legacy, right? There for Stetson Bennett. It doesn't get any better than this. I mean, up until halftime of that football game, guys were ready. I mean, social media was ready to throw him to the side. I saw blue checkers out here saying things like, if the backup can walk, he needs to be in the game right now. Okay, I saw those things on social media at halftime. And he goes on to win a national title, okay, and the MVP of the national championship game. It does not get any better than this. There is no ceiling higher than this. He is the only Georgia quarterback in the history of the program to throw a touchdown in a national title win. That's it. The legacy does not get any better. In terms of greatest of all time, he is not the most talented quarterback ever at Georgia. We know that. He's not even the most talented on the roster currently. He is the greatest story of all time. He is the greatest champion of all time at Georgia. And if however you measure greatness, to me, that's the greatness of this. That is the greatest story I think Georgia will ever see.
Wait a minute now, Brooks. I mean, you was using greatest with the stories. Now, I agree. Stetson Bennett is not the best, the most talented quarterback that's ever come through there. You got the David Greens, you got the Matthew Staffords. But I know you're trying to avoid it. We know that Buck Belue was up until this point the greatest quarterback because of what he did. But he handed the ball off. They wouldn't even let him throw it. I can say it first, Brooks, and you can
look. No, this it's not just
the greatest quarterback in Georgia football history.
Ben, this isn't a discussion just contained to Georgia football. This is the discussion of how do you define greatest of all time? Do you define the greatest of all time as the most talented individual across
best.
the board? Okay, that's the best. The greatest of all time is what? The greatest champion, whoever's the is it a combination of both? Because Jordan is the combination of both. Bill Russell's the greatest champion of all time.
Yeah.
LeBron James is the best player of all time.
Think about this.
So where are we at? Where's GOAT? Because Michael's in the middle.
Oh, but I'm gonna use you and me for a second. Hold on for a second. I'm gonna use you. Just say we all play. We played the same position, right? I got us. I'm the 5-star, right? But I didn't win it, right? And you would have got it won it. To me, the greatest means I was the last team standing.
So
I was the one that did it. That doesn't mean that he's the best quarterback. But at the end of the day,
the easiest way to
DJ Shockley, Matthew Stafford, Jake Fromm, Quincy Carter, all in the room, and they having dinner. They can't eat until Stetson gets there.
No, here's how you define the greatest of all time. Line them all up right in their prime. Who you going with? Who are you taking?
I'm not going with Stetson. I mean,
exactly. So he's not the greatest of all time. So shut up.
You got a car. You got Quincy Carter on the front. You got I played with David Green and DJ Shockley.
No,
this is what I said though. Me not picking Stetson doesn't make him not the greatest, but this is the thing though. I never ever thought that I would see a 6-foot quarterback go first overall. And they go Kyler Murray and Baker. You see what I'm saying? So I did say this though before the season. I said if Georgia's gonna win it, it's gonna be from a dude that grew up wanting to be a Georgia fan because it means something totally. I ain't taking nothing away from JT Daniels, right? JT Daniels got off the plane in Athens and it was a sign that said "Welcome to Atlanta." He don't know where he at, right? So all I'm saying is it is the greatest story, and it's always gonna be that because you know how it is. Brooks, we ain't used to nuance, right? We used to, we used to looking a certain way. But if you go to the record books in high school football in Georgia, Stetson's name is there. And the fact that the first thing he ever won as a champion was the freaking national championship. But whoever got to write this script, it better be Spielberg because ain't nobody else gonna believe it. But I think he is the greatest because they trusted him in a way down the stretch like only elite quarterbacks get trusted. They trusted him to make some throws.
Who is they? The coaching staff. The coaching staff. Because I'll tell you, damn right. You are correct there.
Okay, remember this though, Brooks. The last national championship, Chaney, or I think it was Chaney. Your two best players, Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, weren't on the field when you trying to go in. Now I know game plans and situations, but Brooks, if you the offensive coordinator and he just did that fumble, you losing it.
Yeah.
Get out. You can't get him out quicker, right? But those 4 throws, man, that's confidence. And yes, it's easy to talk about it because he did do it, but I don't know, man. I think that kid, he's a gamer. He ain't gonna look the part, but he still got that ring coming though.
That sounds so sweet. Line them all up. We're all taking Matthew Stafford, and you can't tell me any different.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're all taking him. 6'2", rifle for an arm, can throw it all over the place, agile and athletic in college. Stafford's the greatest quarterback at Georgia ever. He's not the most accomplished or greatest champion at Georgia ever.
There you go. Brooks Austin, hey, we're up against it. We've got plenty to talk about as we go through this offseason. We'll talk soon, Brooks. Thanks much. Brother. We'll come back 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hour 2, busy. Hour number 2. We'll take 3 next. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC podcast, going to join us coming up next hour. We're looking at NIL, which has certainly been in the news a lot lately. Also, Orson Charles, former Georgia tight end, will join us here on 3 and Out as we get ready for hour number 2. Ben and Brooks, I think they could have talked all day about Stetson, JT, who's the greatest quarterback in the history of Georgia football. Had to let it go. And the thing is, that conversation happened, and BJ Bennett not on the show today. Not on the show today. That's a BJ Bennett argument for all time. We'll come back. Hour 2, take 3 next year on 3 and Out. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, Hour 2. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC Podcast, going to join us coming up in about 20 minutes. Also, Orson Charles, former Georgia tight end, going to join us. We'll talk national championship with him. Also, get his thoughts on Brock Bowers, just beast tight end there at the University of Georgia. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. And we have a very special Take 3 host today, Ben Troop.
I mean, listen, all I know is I know he got good genes. I know that he comes from a good home. But I question his cakes that he eats. But maybe he's gotten better. He's young.
All right, we have my son asking the questions today. So what do you have for us?
Take 1. Best player available or need?
That's a great question. That is the question of all questions. Ben, I'm always a need-based guy, and I'm against the grain on that. I know Christian's shaking his head. I am taking a player, the highest player I need. I know people are like, hey, if you got enough left tackles and the best player on your board is a left tackle, just go get another one. I think that's what Cleveland and the Jaguars do a lot. And I think they stay there. I'm taking the best player, the highest graded player I need on my board right when I can get him. I'm a need guy.
Oh, Kevin. I mean, the thing about it is this. I mean, the best player available, you always want the best players. Look at any team. The best teams have the best player. And the thing is, if you can't find a spot for the best player available on the board, you shouldn't be a GM, Trent Baalke. You should be doing something else. Because, yes, every team has a need. The best teams have a need. But you know what I need most? What? The best player available. I need that every single time because this is what you really do, Kevin. You say, what do you rank on your boy? He ranked number one grade A. Yeah. He's a first round pick. Yep. But we got linebackers. Listen, Micah Parsons, right? Look at what he did for that defense. D. Lawrence gets hurt, move him down there, 13 sacks. D. Lawrence comes back, move back to linebacker. I think he's the only player in the league that you have only over 200 snaps at both, defensive end and linebacker. I just think that sometimes, Kevin, don't overthink it. It's like this, Kevin. Kevin, you a baseball guy. Somebody goes, hey, listen, man, I need a pitcher, man. I got this guy that can hit you. Listen, all he do is mash. I can use him. Why? Because we always trying to score a run. So it's almost like when you talk about, because Atlanta's have been driving for need for a long time. How's that worked out? They got 2 offensive linemen in 2019. Me and BJ were there. So what we need is the best available player. Give me the best available.
Are you agreeing with your dad or are you agreeing with Mr. Ben? Oh, that's a trick question.
I agree with Ben.
Oh, my goodness. Somebody is not getting dinner tonight. Somebody is not getting dinner. I know. I'm just kidding. All right. Ask what you got for us. Take 2 here.
Take 2. Why do teams reach on QBs every year, even when grade says they shouldn't?
Great question. Where are you coming up with?
Well, I'm trying to tell you.
Telling you what. These are very insightful questions. So, Ben, answer that. Because every year we see teams, got to get the QB. They panic. And all leading up to the draft, we're like, hey, there's only really 2 quality first-round quarterbacks, and we'll see 5 drafted. Why do teams keep doing it?
Because Kevin, we talk. This is risk versus reward, right? The risk is, he doesn't pan out. Quarterbacks don't pan out every year. What's the reward, Josh Allen? People look at what Patrick Mahomes is now. That's not what they said coming out of Texas Tech, right? People start thinking about, what can my quarterback do for a good quarterback shapes everything. Because now, when you're going through the draft, you say to yourself, hey man, I want to reach on one of these quarterbacks. Well, let's think about the quarterback was in the NFL. How many good quarterbacks is it? 10, maybe. It's a huge drop off. Most quarterbacks, they're all right. They ain't bad. They like it. Look, they like soup when you're sick. You eat it because you got to, not because you want to, right? When you think about these quarterbacks, Kevin, you can have a Baker Mayfield to where it's all hype, but then you can have a Josh Allen to say, hey man. So I think the potential of what he could be is why you do it, and it's the most important position, in the freaking game.
I still say that's one of those things because it's the most important position on the field. Why would you take a guy that you don't think is worth it? I just never understood that. It's like if this is the decision that's going to get me fired, would I rather say, hey, we didn't take a quarterback, I didn't see a franchise guy in the first round, so we went another direction and made the rest of the team better? so that we can continue to find a quarterback, and maybe the quarterback we have will get better when the rest of our team gets better as well. But what I don't understand is, well, we needed a quarterback, so we traded up 8 spots and got a guy that we gave a second-round grade to, and we really didn't think he had a long-term potential, but we needed a quarterback, and I'm going to get skewered if I don't take one, so I'm going to take one. I just don't understand. It was like what was it, Christian Ponder. We saw a number of those guys, like 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 10, and everybody's sitting there going, wait a minute. 3 of these guys had a first-round grade, and one of the 3 was like 28, 29. And we're taking 6 in the top 10. Somebody is just getting nervous and panicking. Why would you take a guy ahead of his spot just because he's a quarterback when you don't? Your own scouting says he's not going to pan out, and you take him in the first round. That just baffles me, Ben.
Well,
that just baffles me.
But this is the thing too, Kevin. Sometimes it's a copycat league. So if you're in between team that's saying, yeah, we need a linebacker, we need a safety, but we kind of that quarterback is there, right? He got a chance. It's almost like saying we got us one too. And you got to trust your gut. Like I'm with the Titans obviously in 2006 when it's, do you get Matt Leinart or do you get Vince Young? Now we need a quarterback. Now, Jeff Fisher wanted Matt Leinart because went to USC, Matt Leinart USC, you got the ties, head coach. But the owner, Bud Adams from Houston, Vince Young from Houston wanted Vince Young. Now, I think both of them didn't last that long in the league, right? But I think, Kevin, sometimes too, it's almost like it's the movie The Rookie. The dude get out of the car, he got his kids. He like, stay here with your brother. He goes, listen, man, you just threw 90 miles an hour. If I don't tell him you could do it, I'm gonna lose my job. But then I got to tell him. I have to tell him, but he's 49. What? So I think with the quarterbacks, Kevin, it's almost like you say to yourself, if we don't get if we pass up on him and he end up being a all pro, we could have had him. So
I understand that you're scared of missing out, but if everybody's finding diamonds in the rough, there would be no rough. There would just be a pile of diamonds. Right?
Yep.
I mean, so I always think it's like, oh man, we think with the little developments, and I get that part of it. But how many diamonds do you got to polish? I mean, if at the quarterback spot, and I'm not saying you just look at, but there are certain guys who are like, I need a quarterback. If Matt Ryan's sitting there, I'm coming out of Boston College. I think most people would be like, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable. Even if I said I think the Falcons should have taken somebody else at the time, I think you felt pretty comfortable that he could play. He could come and play. There are certain guys that you feel like are reaches. It's like, was anybody going to be beating the brakes off of you trying to get this guy from you? You know what I'm saying? Like we're jumping up into the top 15, top 10 to take this guy, and nobody's going to fight us for him. But we got our quarterback, maybe. Think he can play. I just never understood that, why teams just jump up for quarterbacks. I realize it's an important position, but why do you every other pick you would never do that, Ben, for hardly any other pick on the board, go against your scouting and your grades that you laid out in the mock draft to take another player. You wouldn't take a player that you thought was 30 picks lower in the top 10. No. Oh, we got to have him, man. The only quarterbacks. I don't understand. All right, moving along. Help us out here, Rhett. What you got for us for the last one?
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Pick 3. Does name, image, likeness, and transfer portal need regulation or leave it alone?
Boy, that is a complex question. You are coming up with some gems today.
I mean, you are.
For take
I mean, you better be like a BJ in here because he'd be like, hey, man, he's trying to take my job. Some of these questions. I would say this. Transfer portal, I don't think needs regulation because it's the only time that as a player you kind of control your own movement. Like, because yes, you got recruited by teams and you pick one, but this is where you go, okay, I'm gonna bet on myself. Now, when it comes to naming image like the Kevin, we talk about this all the time. All I know is guys get paid. I know that it's a lot of ways they can get it done. I know that the school's not supposed to have any affiliation in it. I know that the head coach is supposed to know about it, don't supposed to talk to nobody. I used to work at this major retail company, high end, and I was security. And I used to have to go downstairs, and I had to be to do the new hires. New hires like, I'd be like, they asking all questions like, PTO and all this. No. My job is to make sure you don't get fired. AKA, when it comes to the NIL, I need to know where I can't go. Like, if it's a whole bunch of buttons, which one can I not push? Because, Kevin, just like I know. You start talking about money exchanging hands, period, it's going to get crazy. You start talking about money exchanging hands from 18 to 24-year-olds, and these guys got fanfare, they got stars next to their name, they got prestige, they had 50 offers. I need to know what I can't do. I know what I can. but I need to know what I can't do. It's almost like being at an amusement park. There are certain areas that have not only doors in front of, but locks on the doors. Why? People still turning that knob, and the only reason why they didn't go in is because it was locked. I need to know what I can't do, because Kevin, just like I know, as soon as it's some type of investigation, it's going to be, wait a minute, they didn't tell me I couldn't do this. So I definitely think it's got to be the NIL.
Yeah, I think the problem with NIL is it went from a good idea to it's the wild, wild west very, very quickly. And again, I am all for people making money off of themselves, right? 100%. Hey, I have an idea. I want to go make money. I have a brand. I want to go make money. The problem is you're seeing things pop up that have nothing to do with brand, have nothing to do with promoting one's likeness, have everything to do. I mean, Drew Rosenhaus basically came out and said, yeah, this new NIL thing that we put together for the U players, it's about keeping the best players at Miami and out of the transfer portal. I'm sorry. I didn't think name, image, likeness was supposed to be about preventing kids from transferring. I thought it was about kids who just wanted to get a pizza on Friday night to be able to make a little scratch. Now we're getting $50,000 because you play at Miami, not because of who you are and your name and your image and your likeness being used by a company for whatever purpose. That's where I think it's a slippery slope to that, where, again, essentially the NCAA just threw their hands up and said, to heck with it. And now, Jeremy, think about this, Ben. Honest to goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially what has happened was that Jeremy Pruitt and Tennessee got in trouble because a recruit got cash in a McDonald's bag.
Mm-hmm.
Now we just say, hey, we don't need the McDonald's bag.
Nope.
And what was that for? Was that because of his name? It was like, no, we want you to play here. The end. You're a good player. And again, it's kind of superficial, but like, I don't care what your name and your image. I'm not using you to market anything. I want you to play at Tennessee. Here's a bag of cash in McDonald's bag.
Yep.
Now we're just giving them the cash. They don't need the bag.
And I'm not.
And so I think that's, to me, where it gets interesting, because we went from college students need to be able to make money to it's just colleges are setting up pseudo non-affiliated organizations. And again, you're talking with the guy with the Gator Collective. I'm not saying it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's not what name, image, likeness
is
intended to do.
No. It's almost like this, Kevin. No. It's almost like, okay. We all played board games growing up. Nobody playing them has ever read the instructions because in our mind we've done it so much. You ever played with a person that they read the instructions and they told you, you can't do that, right? Yes, I can. You say, yes, I can, because I've been doing that for years. No. I'm not saying what you've been doing. I'm saying what you've been doing is incorrect. And Kevin, I think you just said it. It's almost like when people saying, well, people shouldn't be giving these kids money. Listen, let me tell y'all something, man. If it's your money and you went to these schools and somebody say we can get them, and you got the money to do it, don't take the no, just scratch that. It's only one, it's only so many, 90-inch plasma screens out there. You in a position to get one, Kevin. Now what you start saying is they give you the price, you go, okay. And I think then they'll go, okay, now what is it going to take to get it? Like, I know how much it costs. How do I get in the front of the line? This is about being in the front of the line, not just in the line. So yeah, Kevin, it's gonna get crazy, because at the end of the day, the great Deion Sanders said, if you didn't want us to start bickering, you shouldn't have gave us different size checks. And there's a lot of different size checks going on out there right now.
It truly is. And again, I'm interested to hear your conversation coming up in the final hour with Eddie Rojas of the Gator Collective. Again, because I'm not saying out of Florida, you just happen to be talking to him. There's stuff like this being set up at schools all across America, right? I mean, the Oregon's got one. Phil Knight obviously involved with that. And other things. So I'm interested to see like how that fits in. And again, the conversation started off like, man, I can't go and sign an autograph and just get $1,000 so I can go out on the weekend with my girlfriend. Think about this. That turned into $50,000 guaranteed to every offensive lineman at Texas.
Yep.
That's where we started, and that's where we are. And it didn't even take a year to get that far.
Or Kevin, this is one thing we leaving out too, though. We hear naming image likeness. I'm going to college on a scholarship. I get it. No. You have the potential to make money off your name, because once again, everybody, certain people, they ain't benefiting from this at all, and they seeing all this stuff going across the bottom of the screen, and guys signing for money at one school in the transfer portal next year. You better read that fine print, young man.
It may not all be. Okay, I get it. May not be what it's all cracked up to be. Rhett, thank you.
You're welcome.
You did an excellent job. You brought insight and questions that neither Ben or I.
Thank you
Would
for
have been-
letting me have me on the show.
Hey, you're welcome. You want to send it? You listen to Dad enough. You want to send it to break? You know how to do it? No? Okay.
I listen to it all the time, though.
He does listen to the show all the time. Tell him we'll have him coming up next.
Chris Grody coming up next. Locked on SEC podcast.
That's right. He will be joining us next here on 3 and Out. Good job on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us. Thanks for making us a part of your day. And joining us here, so much going on in college football right now. We had to check in with our next guest, Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC podcast. He joins us here on 3 and Out. Chris, welcome. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Yeah, never a dull moment. This transfer portal movement seems to be there's a big story every day across the SEC of somebody moving on. It's crazy.
It really is, and I know that's one of the things we've seen a lot of discussion the last couple of days of is, and it feels like the NCAA's kind of thrown its hands up and kind of shown, I guess, what little power they even have at this point. They've kind of thrown their hands up on the transfer portal, name, image, likeness, and just kind of taking a step back. Let's start with the transfer portal. I mean, we saw it immediately. National championship game was a week ago Monday night. Tuesday, guys who played in that game were already transferring out and going to other schools. Is there a need for some sort of regulation rather than, what has become a free-for-all? I know some people say, look, it's their right to move, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but how do you control it so it's just thousands and thousands of kids swapping places every single year?
Yeah, I think Peter Burns from the SEC Network had a pretty good theory. I think he said, you limit it to a certain window, whether that's right when the season ends and then you cut it off sometime in April, or, you start it up in April and force these guys to at least go through spring ball with their team and see if, see where they're going to be on the depth chart, get a pretty good idea come March or April. And then, if you want to head somewhere else, that gives you still April, May, June, July, and August to study the new playbook for whatever new school you go to. I don't know what the right answer is, but that one sounds like a pretty good one just because right now it's a free-for-all. And, Ben will tell you, how many times when he played did guys feel like, oh, man, I'm not number one on the depth chart, this sucks. And, if these rules were active then, you would have had guys jumping ship and jumping around. And, in hindsight, a lot of guys said, man, I made the right decision to stay. I know I've heard Matt Flynn, the LSU quarterback in 2007 when they won the national championship. He was a senior that year. And I know he said, man, I'm happy I stuck around because when he came in as a freshman at LSU, he was on a depth chart that had Matt Mock and Marcus Randall and Jamarcus Russell and, a bunch of big names ahead of him. And he sat there and waited his turn and finally got his chance to win a national championship. And I just feel like if that were today with these standards, that wouldn't happen. You're literally seeing Zach Calzada jumps out of A&M and goes to Auburn, and it's like, man, at least go through spring camp with these guys and see, you may be better. I know they just signed a 5-star. You may be better than that 5-star, him as a freshman. So I don't know. There is no right answer, but I think eventually we got to get back to at least some sort of penalty, if not a window that allows you to transfer instead of just jumping in the transfer portal whenever you like and going school to school.
Chris, that extra year of eligibility that a lot of these guys are still like working on. I think we might be still a couple of years out of that, kind of like being regulated. How much is that like hindering things as well? The fact that a lot of guys played a year that didn't even count, they get to come back as super seniors and things of that nature. How much outside of just the transfer portal, just that extra year of eligibility, how much is that helping or hurting, I guess, recruiting an incoming freshman?
Well, I don't know. It's like a lot of schools, like they put up their big board and they're expecting, this guy's going to go and this guy's going to go. And then they find out, oh no, this guy's going to come back for another year. And it's like, it throws off their whole, depth chart of what they're expecting for the next year. Now, from a certain standpoint, it's good. You want to bring back a 5th-year senior, like for instance, Georgia, Robert Beal just announced he's coming back for another year. That's great that you get a guy with that kind of experience that wants to come back, but yeah, you may have signed a couple outside linebackers in this recruiting class and promised them immediate playing time. And now you're going, you're going to be behind this other guy who decided to come back. But I'll tell you this, it's confusing as hell when I'm trying to look at guys. I don't know what to refer to guys. Is this guy a junior? Is he a senior? He's a double junior? I don't know what to refer to guys as anymore because it's so confusing what classification they are. But I'll never say it's a bad thing. It's always a good thing for me, for the sport, and for the SEC when you get guys coming back for a 5th year, because it means you got some veteran presence there for a team that, let's face it, across the SEC, you need these teams are looking for senior leadership right now.
I was going to say, Chris, how much of this transfer portal stuff will work itself out once the cycle of the the super seniors, that everybody that got the extra year because of COVID, obviously rosters are just, filled with guys who got extra year. Maybe obviously coaches weren't planning on them getting extra years. how much of the transfer portal stuff you think calms down once there's more of a settled 4-year cycle roster and not guys who are just cramming the roster full as like, hey, I'm a second-year freshman still with a redshirt year, and I'm a super senior. All that kind of stuff works itself out.
Yeah, it's going to be a couple years before it gets settled out. I mean, obviously the fifth-year seniors or sixth-year seniors, a lot of those guys will be gone after this coming season. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the guy who was still a freshman was a second-year freshman, but still hadn't redshirted. There's just so many different classifications that are going to mess everything up for these guys. And the guys who you have to be 3 years removed from high school to go to the pros. Well, you're going to have a lot of sophomores that may be going pro next year. That technically are still sophomores on the books. So yeah, I mean, it's going to take a little bit to figure out, but yeah, it just makes for some really interesting storylines because, like I mentioned, with Beal at Georgia, Miles Brennan at LSU is another one that really intrigues me. I mean, you're talking guys that are going borderline 22, 23 years old now that have been around for a long time. I mean, Les Miles recruited Miles Brennan at LSU. That was 3 coaches ago. So there's some really interesting storylines I think we're going to see across the SEC. But by the same realm, I mean, the transfer portal's worked out very well. LSU, who I just mentioned, they were up to, I think, 11 transfers coming in from the transfer portal of guys that are going to be impact starters for them this year. And you talk about Tennessee last year that bring in Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker, and now Hooker's coming back for another year. And then they're looking like they're going to be poised at competing for the SEC East next year in Knoxville. So in the other realm, the transfer portal's really helped a lot of schools across the SEC, and I think it's built some star power. Will Levis from Penn State coming into Kentucky, he's sticking around another year, and I think it's going to provide a lot of star power for the conference that we really need.
When you think about it, when you think about the transfer portal, none bigger than no bigger name than JT Daniels. I mean, I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, or if he's transferred or not, but JT Daniels, Carson Beck, Stetson Bennett obviously having a national championship attached to his name. What happens in that room if Stetson Bennett decides to come back, JT Daniels decides to not transfer, and Carson Beck said, I want to wait this thing out?
Yeah, it's a really interesting scenario. I mean, as far as we know, from what we've been told, JT Daniels has entered his name into the transfer portal, but you still look around, that's a very crowded quarterback room. When you talk about Carson Beck, who's been hanging around there waiting for his turn, they bring in Brock Vandergriff as a freshman this past year. You get Gunnar Stockton in this recruiting class. I mean, not all those guys are going to stick around. You're going to have another name or two that's going to hit the transfer portal and leave. I just think it's going to be a really difficult discussion with Stetson Bennett because, look, you praise the guy for everything he did this year, played it, fought off the second half of that national championship game, and he deserves every accolade in the world. But if he comes to Kirby Smart today and says, Coach, I want to come back for another season, Kirby's really got to have a long, hard conversation with him and his staff and say, guys, what's best for Georgia moving forward? Look, we love Stetson. We'll build a statue of Stetson for what he meant to this program this past year. That said, is he our best option at quarterback next year? Because there's some really highly touted recruits like Vandergriff and Gunnar Stockton who I think deserve an opportunity to start as early as possible. So there's going to be some real serious conversations had in that room. I mentioned LSU. I know Brian Kelly, one of the first serious conversations he had with Max Johnson when he got in there was, you're going to have to compete for this job. And to be honest, I don't know if you're going to win this job. So he hit the transfer portal and he ends up at A&M. So, there's going to be some real serious conversations to be had because, man, I don't know if you can keep more than 2-3 really good names in your quarterback room anymore because everybody's got one eye on the transfer portal.
Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC podcast, joining us here on 3 and Out. Chris, want to get your thoughts on another thing that's obviously gotten huge. Maybe even, I don't know, out of control may not be a correct word just yet, but name, image, likeness, NIL. It's obviously gotten huge. And Ben and I were talking about this last segment. It's gone from, hey, man, the students should be able to make a little something off of the millions of dollars that some of these colleges are generating. And, hey, we can't get snacks. We can't take our girlfriend out to the movies. We need to be able to make a little money. To now, shell companies kind of being set up just to funnel cash to athletes. I mean, the U announcing that, hey, there's a company that's only been around a week, but they signed like 8 name, image, likeness deals and may not have a product yet, but they're $40,000, $30,000 deals to the U players. And Drew Rosenhaus saying, no, that's there so we keep players from going in the transfer portal and we keep the best players at Miami. That doesn't sound like name, image, likeness. That sounds like we've just taken the money out of the McDonald's bag and just thrown the McDonald's bag to the side, and now we're just giving it to them.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it loses the spirit of what name, image, and likeness is. You know, the whole root of this, when we talked about it, was, you know, Tim Tebow and Johnny Manziel. Those are the two biggest prime examples I used of superstars in the sport that were stuck in college and couldn't make any money off themselves. I even think back to Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger at LSU. I remember they made Honey Badger T-shirts with the number 7 on the back when he was a junior at LSU, and they got confiscated from the bookstore. They said, you can't sell these. You know, it's made, you know, can't put his number on the T-shirts. And it was just absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, that's what I think of with name, image, and likeness. Opportunities for those guys to profit off of their name. This thing is not like Texas is set up, where each offensive lineman that comes in gets $30,000 a year. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what your name is. You're just going to get that because you play offensive line at Texas. That's not what this thing was supposed to be. You know, I think of there's a guy in Baton Rouge that by the name of Gordon McKernan. He's a local attorney. He set up a deal where with Kayshon Boutte, the star wide receiver at LSU, he was thinking about entering the portal. Gordon stepped in and said, hey, I want to use you in some commercials. Let me sign you to a deal. That's what the NIL deal is intended for a guy like Kayshon Boutte to be a star at the local level in Louisiana, be in commercials for this attorney and make money off of it. That's what it's intended to be, not Texas A&M boosters stepping in and say, hey, let's go get as many 5 stars as we can and we'll pay them $100,000 or whatever it is. Again, I don't hate on the kids for getting the money. Go get your bag. But at the end of the day, that's not what the NIL was intended to be. And what this is turning into is it's just turning into big money boosters with the backdoor $100 handshakes. Now it's just out in the open. They can just pay the guy for whatever. But I look at it as, man, you got to get some kind of return on the investment. If you run a law office, put the guy in commercials, have him promote your law office on social media. That's what name, image, and likeness is. Not just, hey, come play at our school, here's money, and that's it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chris, when I think about the fact that when you talk about being able to, you know, you take a brand that's small and you put it with a brand that's already established. And I think what happens is the mere fact that most of these young men, if they don't already know, they're not going pro. This is about having a career after your collegiate career is over. And I do agree. These boosters, I mean, they saying, look, man, what's $100,000 to a billionaire that you know that has oil rigs? I get that portion, but at what point does the education NIL fall upon these schools when they don't got to give any money? At least make sure these young men understanding that if I made $100,000 but my bank account says 0, did I make anything at all?
Yeah, and the Texas A&M one is going to be a really interesting, you know, kind of mark of how this is going to go. Because somebody brought up to me, said, man, you know these 5 stars. You see them at the IMG Academy where they all get together, or some of these showcases where, you know, some of them are divas. Some of them have the egos and all that sort of thing. And so if you're bringing in a bunch of 18-year-old 4 and 5 stars with egos, and then you're going, hey, here's a check for $50,000 or whatever, you know, does that kid still have the motivation to put forth the full work ethic, or does he feel like, man, I've arrived? On top of it, you start to get some bad blood between guys behind closed doors. Hey, this jerk just came in. He's making money. I've been here 2 years working my butt off, and I'm not making anything. I think how Jimbo Fisher and his staff manage this is going to be a real barometer for how the NIL deals happen moving forward, especially at the big schools where the bigger money is being handed to a lot of the big name recruits, because man, jealousy is going to be a part of this. You can see guys going, hey, I ain't getting nothing. You know, I was told yesterday that Eli Ricks, the whole reason he left LSU and he's at Alabama now is because Derek Stingley Jr. got multiple NIL deals at LSU. Eli Ricks didn't get any. So right there, he said, I'm jealous. I'm out. And he ran off to Alabama. Now he's going to start in the Alabama secondary. So, yeah, this is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. But again, man, the A&M locker room, they're going to have to do such a good job trying to keep all those egos in check and giving the kids playing time that deserve it. And what happens if I'm 5-star and I came in and I'm not playing immediately, but I'm making my money? You know, how does that affect things? It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
It certainly will. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC podcast, our guest here on 3 and Out. Chris, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. LockedOnSEC.com and check out the podcast.
Appreciate it. Chris Gordy joining us. We'll come back with more. Orson Charles set to join us next here on 3. Welcome back. 3 and Out. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here on the show. Georgia. Again, as we talked earlier in the show, Brooks Austin, the party continues. They're celebrating that national championship. Our next guest, former Georgia tight end, fourth round pick in 2012 by the Cincinnati Bengals. Orson Charles joins us here on 3 and Out. Orson, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself, and
Hey,
thank you for having me.
Hey, we're doing fantastic. First of all, Georgia winning the national championship a week ago from Monday. Man, as a former player, how much do you feel how much that means to the program, to the former players, to the fans, to finally not have to talk too much about 1980 anymore?
You're definitely completely right. When I saw that and they won, my heart dropped. I was so happy for them because we needed this. This was something that we needed. Now we can be talked about as one of those prestige colleges. Obviously, we have to continue to win more, but this was a stepping stone in the right direction. And then to finally beat Bama. Like, beating Bama is like beating Florida to me. Like, I always wanted to beat them, and I know a couple of years ago, we lost twice to them, and then we lost to them earlier this year. So to finally get over that hump, I'm very excited and happy for my boys.
Javaris Johnson, Randy McMichael, Arthur Lynch, Montrez Milner, yourself, Brock Bowers. True freshman. He was everything for that offense this year. He was a mismatch nightmare. He got speed like a receiver, skills like, a great athlete. Orson, when you saw this guy going out there doing what he's doing and knowing that he's a true freshman doing it, had to make you feel good.
Yeah, 1,000%. And hats off to him as a student, because to see how much they use him, and I know Todd, because Todd was with me at Cleveland, and he definitely wanted to utilize us. But for him to come in as a true freshman and to just soak in all the different positions they have him playing, hats off to him. Like, he's going to be a wonderful player. He is a great player already, and I can't wait to see him continue to keep growing.
You mentioned Todd Monken there in that offense. Obviously, he did a tremendous job there with that Georgia offense, but putting your faith in the passing game in a freshman tight end. Again, normally you would say, hey, I put my faith in the quarterback, maybe a running back that we feel can carry the football, maybe one of those wide receivers outside, but a freshman tight end in key situations, not just in the national championship game, but others, that's the go-to guy for Georgia as a true freshman. How much confidence does Todd have in those guys, obviously a tight end, to go out and make plays for him?
To be honest, we could be honest. The tight end is supposed to run the offense. Like, supposed to go through us. We can block, we can catch, we can do everything. But in all seriously, Todd has to have tremendous respect for him to trust him so many times after so many opportunities in the game. And I'm happy for him. Like, I can't say enough. He's shown that he can take it on, and I'm sure, because I know Todd, I'm sure that he's shown that he can take on the bulk of the playbook in practice. And that's the only way that you're going to get, Todd's trust. So I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. And like I said earlier, I can't wait to see him, grow into an even better player.
Orson, there are stories in college football, and then there is the story, Stetson Bennett, a guy that, a Southeast Georgia kid, grew up wanting to be a Georgia Bulldog, obviously didn't meet the height requirement or whatever it is when you talk about looking the part. The last 2 years for him and how he's grown, and then to end it against Bama, 4 for 4, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns to seal that win, take nothing away from the pick 6. Talk about Stetson Bennett, talk about, how much he's grown, and when that Hollywood script is put out for Stetson Bennett, it's going to be hard for people to believe, no, this is not based on a true story. This is a true story.
Yeah, and I hated that recruiting process. Aaron and I hated it because they judge us based off of our height and our weight, but you can't judge somebody's heart. You can't judge that bulldog in somebody that wants to go out there and go get it every day, and he's proven that. So I'm hoping that the recruiters see Bennett and see, okay, well, we can't just want that 6'5" tight end or that 6'4" quarterback. There's other guys that probably don't match up to that height requirement. That's ballers. They just need a chance. And I'm happy he had that chance, and he executed it.
And again, Orson, I know we hear stories like this all the time in football of guys who don't meet the prototype yet can go out there and make plays. in this era of alleged, thinking outside the box that everybody likes to do, why don't we see coaches trying to find guys that are good playmakers? The tape's there. They just aren't the prototype size.
Repeat that question again. You said why don't they?
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't they?
Because everybody's doing it. It's a copycat. It's a copycat league. Just like in the league, everybody, when Travis Kelce and Gronk was killing it, okay, well, we need a 6'5", 6'7" tight end. Just like the quarterback. I mean, it's in everything. I think it's a copycat league, and I can appreciate my boards for, saying, you know what, we don't care about his height, we don't care the walk on, we're gonna give him a chance. Now, based off of that chance, and we give him, let's see what he do. Let's see what he do with it.
All right, Orson, man, it's Monday night. It's your dogs. It's Alabama. I mean, you hear it's almost like you can't even block out the noise because it's coming from everywhere, even your family members. That clock goes 0, 0, 0, and you see that red and black confetti and that white confetti coming down. I mean, what is that feeling for you? Because obviously, you have to take the good and the bad as it pertains to being a Georgia Bulldog. Whether you had when all you could do is control what you could do when you was there, but what does that feel like knowing that now, man? The 40-year-old monkey is off our back, but Kirby did what he set out to do, and it only took him 6 years to do it.
That confetti drop, that scoreboard, we was up. Everything else don't even matter. Like, we did what we were supposed to. We finally did it. Yes, it took him 6 years. Look, like, everybody can get off Kirby's back. Everybody can get off our back, and then now we can just go ahead and keep winning them. So the moment that confetti dropped, I'm like, yes, it was all worth it, and nothing else matters. Just us.
Orson, yourself, and I know we talked about this. I know we talked about Brock. How I played in the era of Randy McMichael, Javaris Johnson, Ben Watson. Obviously, I remember you when you was there. I know about the Titans from Georgia, like I know about the Titans from Florida. If y'all finally able to get in that room, and obviously y'all gonna be talking to Brock, but what would that conversation be like? Because I'm always curious, as when it comes to this game, we don't get a chance to be around each other, man. Real life takes over. But if Orson is in there with Randy McMichael, man, what would that conversation be like? Especially since, they respect the whole program now that Kirby got y'all back to that promised land.
What would it be like? I don't know if we'll be talking about football. I think that they do a great job. I mean, I would answer any football questions, but I would like to just be in a moment. Hey, how are you? Good job. I'm proud of you. What do you like doing for fun? Let's go do that. Because I think once you get into that building, it's just football. But, me coming out of ball, I care more about the person. I care more about you. You're a freshman. You did all that. Like, are you okay? Like, how do you decompose there in a week? That's my main concern. And I think it was the same thing when I came out of Georgia and I sat down with Ben Watson and Randy. Like, we went to some restaurant and we just sat and talked. Like, I just asked them a whole bunch of questions about life, and I really don't even know if we really talked about ball.
Orson Charles, our guest here on 3 and Out. Orson, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Y'all have a great one.
Hey, we'll do. Orson Charles joining us here on 3 and Out. We'll come back with more all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here. Busy final hour around the corner. We'll hear from John Shipley, the Jaguar report, and he will give us the very latest where the Jags at in their head coaching search. What are they looking to do at number 1 overall there in the draft? And Ben will sit down with Eddie Rojas for this week's edition of Troop Talk. Eddie Rojas of the Gator Collective, an organization put together specifically for name, image, likeness there with the University of Florida. So, again, just one of many that are popping up all over the country involving these universities across the college landscape. So busy final hour upcoming, Ben.
Yes, I mean, Kevin, we always trying to better understand this name and image likeness. I'm looking forward to the conversation with Eddie. I think when you talk about something that's new, as name and image likeness, people, I go back to the board games. We've been playing board games our whole life. We ain't never read the instructions. I just think that we want to make sure we understand this thing because, Kevin, as crazy as it is now, could you imagine what this thing is going to be not 10 years from now, 2-3 years from now, when we have a little bit better understanding of it?
Absolutely. We've got so much to get to coming up in the final hour. We'll look at Mel Kiper's mock draft again. What does he have the Falcons and what does he have the Jags doing there? Number 1, John Shipley joining us and Eddie Rojas in the final hour of the show here. It's 3 Now, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Final hour of 3 and Out. We've got John Shipley of the Jaguar Report joining us coming up in about 15 minutes. Also, Ben sits down with Eddie Rojas of the Gator Collective for this week's edition of Troop Talk. So looking forward to that as well. But it's mock draft season, Ben, and Mel Kiper's mock draft 1.0 is out. So just take that for what it is. 1.0 Mel Kiper Jr. mock draft. Got the Jags taking Aiden Hutchinson, number 1 out of Michigan, which I know BJ is not, if he was here on the show, he'd say, look, I don't like that pick, but I will say it's mock draft 1.0. That's probably not going to be the pick at number 1. It'll probably be somebody else, but Aiden Hutchinson, at least early on, Mel Kiper's number 1 overall pick there to the Jags.
What I don't like, I mean, listen, I'm happy for Aiden Hutchinson. He ain't done nothing but went out there and put it on tape. 6'5", 6'6", 265, can definitely turn the corner. I mean, when you look at pass rushers, Kevin, they are at a premium. When you think about what the Bosa brothers can do to a team, what the Watt brothers can do to a game plan. We talk about guys like Myles Garrett, what those guys can do on the outside as far as like wrecking game plans. I like Aiden Hutchinson. He definitely has the size, definitely has the build, definitely has the measurables, being a Heisman Trophy finalist, but when I saw him against Georgia, I didn't hear much from him at all. And that was supposed to be the key of the game. Being able to get to the quarterback and force Stetson Bennett to be uncomfortable. Stetson Bennett sat in that pocket and did what he wanted to do. But Aiden Hutchinson is benefiting from how he played, where he played, and the position that he plays. When you think about the defensive end position, Kevin, I mean, you want to be able to get one, but he's getting the best tackles in the world now. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that Warren McClellan, those guys ain't going to become big-time, long NFL careers, All-American, all-conference type players. But you didn't hear anything from Aiden Hutchinson. But the one thing Aiden Hutchinson has on his side is the hype train. Mel Kiper Jr., Ty McShay, all the NFL Live. You're going to have everybody that's going to break down. And Kevin, like you said, I remember coming out way back in 2004, watching them mock drafts. Well, that was more when it was in the magazines. We picking up the magazines, and you're looking at yourself. You're not going past this, not going past that. To be the number 1 overall pick, that means out of everybody in this draft, you are the best one. Aiden, now look, you're a good player, but the best player in this draft. Now, I'm not saying this draft is loaded like drafts we've seen in the past, but Kevin, we always talking about reaching. The Jaguars in the last 5 years have gotten, this will be their 4th, if they get Aiden Hutchinson, this will be their 4th defensive lineman they taken in the draft. They had Josh Allen, he's going into his 5th year. You got Clavon Chason going into his 3rd year. You talk about Tavon Brown, I think it's going to his 4th or 5th year. And now if you get Aiden Hutchinson, I just don't see him helping, because while he has talent, it was more about, him being a more supreme talent where he was and going up against like not as athletic tackles in the conference that he played in, because you went to the big bad SEC and it got ugly. And, Kayvon Thibodeau, I think, is the number 2. I think they got him like the number 2 prospect coming out. Both of those guys played in the Army All-American game 3 years ago, and both of those guys were going up against like Evan Neals and those guys in it, and it was the same result. And they was in high school then. 3 years later, or 3.5, 4 years later, those guys are still getting that out of Kevin. He's probably gonna go top 5. But like you said, the fact that he's number 1 now, everybody's gonna be turning on the tape, and they're gonna listen. College football playoff semifinal is all you need to turn on.
That
hey, Coach Harbaugh, could you also say, listen, our sound, come back tomorrow.
Yeah, we had a problem. There's
Coach, is that Georgia? Or is that Ohio State? No, that's the team in red. No, they got silver helmets. Give me the team that got the G on the side. I want to see what happened when you went up against them.
Yeah, we got hacked. We lost that game footage there at the Orange Bowl. No, I think that's an interesting thought. I think the Jags have other issues that they can address. Certainly, to me, and I agree with BJ on that, is if I'm Jacksonville, I mean, you can mock draft whatever you want. Your number 1 priority is to make sure that Trevor Lawrence doesn't get Joe Burrow, right? I mean, and by that, I mean, year 1 Joe Burrow. Yep. You're running around hoping to God nobody hits you again, and you try to protect him and keep him standing upright and not injured and out. And as you said, look at the difference. Joe Burrow, year 1, running for his life, gets injured. Joe Burrow year 2, they said, hey, maybe we should give our number 1 draft pick, I don't know, some guys that could keep guys off of him.
Just a
And
little
when
bit.
they did that, look at the team. Obviously, he has great players around him. They went out and got Jamar Chase, but you address the guy standing directly in front of him, and he took off in a big way. I think if Jackson would do the same thing. Falcons, interesting spot, and I heard Mel talk about this, Ben, on another show. He said, look, I'm kind of up in the air with Atlanta, what they could do, but he said, I had a name in, I scratched it off, I put another name in, I scratched it off, ended up mocking Derek Stingley Jr. to the Falcons. I know we had some comments earlier in the show saying, look, AJ Terrell, Derek Stingley Jr., you could do a lot worse as your DBs locking down on the outside than those two guys. I agree. Is that, though, what Arthur Smith and company is looking at when you have an aging quarterback who has hit more than any other quarterback in the league in 2021?
Yeah, Kevin, I think when you think about a Falcons team, I mean, the one thing you do have that's the highest level of stability is Matty Ice, right? Now, you want to be able to protect him. Matty Ice is not getting younger. And if you talk about quarterback years, I mean, he's 50, 60 when you talk about how many hits he's taken, but you want to be able to say what is giving us the best return on our investment. And that's been the cornerback position. Derek Stingley Jr., we've been talking about him being a potential top 5 pick since he came out, 3 years ago in that 2019 LSU team that won the national championship, obviously went undefeated. I think, Kevin, sometimes when you think about Atlanta, it's so many needs. You need a receiver, need a running back, need a D lineman, need an O lineman. Probably could use another safety. So let's give us a young cornerback. Maybe we address the safety position in the, in free agency. Maybe we can address those other things in the draft. But if I'm getting him that high, he needs to come in and play right now. I think Derek Stingley Jr. is a guy that's ready to come in and play right now. He comes from that pedigree of DBs at LSU. I think he's primed and ready to be a big time, and he can learn from a young guy. Him and AJ Terrell, they ain't that different in age. Both of those guys are coming from big time programs. Both of those guys are coming from national championship programs, and you want to be able to have a guy that plays your position that's similar in age and in resume. So yeah, Derek Stingley I think will be a home run because Kevin, if it's a quarterback, you're reaching. If it's an O lineman, you just playing and plugging him. If it's the D lineman, good God, pray for him because what is he going to do on the D line? Because think about it, Kevin. If he goes first round, they're going to be expecting that D lineman to be the bell cow as far as like going ahead and get to the quarterback. Well, you can't do that now. You ain't getting to the quarterback consistently now. So I'd rather go cornerback, and try to address other needs. Because I think we got 2 second round picks, so maybe Atlanta can address 2 positions of need in the second round.
Yeah, going to be interesting to watch there. You mentioned earlier in the show, Calvin Ridley. That's another factor, right? It's not like you lost him to free agency. You just lost him for mental health issues. And again, I think everybody has long said, if that's what needs to be handled, go handle that. Go take care of what Beast Mode said, take care of your mentals and your chicken.
Talk about it.
That's what he's trying to do. And so look, I think as a Falcon, say, hey, we're here to support you for that. But at last check, he had missed over half the season. And they asked Arthur Smith the last week of the season, what's an update? And he said, quote, nothing has changed. That's all I know. Nothing has changed. So if you're the Falcons, do you operate as if he's not ever coming back? Do you go out and use high draft capital on a wide receiver to get more weapons? How would you approach that, Ben, knowing that, look, there's a guy dealing with a serious issue, and you can appreciate that and be there, respect that, and say, hey, we're here for you. But at the same time saying, look, I got a football team to put together, and if you're not going to be there, I kind of need to know that and move on and try to find somebody else to fill those obviously big shoes, because part of moving Julio Jones out was, hey, you had Calvin Ridley, and we lost the number 1 receiver, but we got a guy who's ready to be a number 1 receiver. And obviously for a very important reason, that didn't work out.
Well, I mean, Kevin, they respect Calvin Ridley's decision, but they can't trust him at this point, because if he does come back in 2022, who's to say that he doesn't want to leave again? Look, you got to respect what he does, but you got to operate this thing as what it is. It's a business. You got to go out there and get somebody in free agency, or definitely address it in the draft. I mean, when you talk about the receiver position, you're going to have a lot of guys to choose from. Ohio State going to have some big-time players, with Chris Olave and those guys coming out. You talk about Arkansas, you're going to have receivers. The receivers is never, ever going to be a position that's not going to be deep in any draft. But I do think that, Kevin, you got to move on from Ridley, because he's on the non-activity list, and he's not injured. I don't even know how that works as far as like him getting paid. If he's getting paid, I mean, with no production and he's not hurt, Arthur Blank is like, look, man, and if you talk about a deeper issue, any other player, they got to address it. Listen, fellas, we are here for y'all mental health, but we got to run an organization. Like we have to. And I am not downgrading or being dismissive of your situation, but where does that leave us? This ain't like college, man, the way I got 30 other receivers that can play and plug. A number one receiver in the NFL is just like a franchise quarterback. It's only 32 of them, right? And you one of them. Now it's 31 of them. So yes, Kevin, you got to address in the offseason. Yes, you respect Ridley, but when he gets back in the facility, be like, no, I need to talk to you. When they asking Arthur Blank. That's the owner. They ain't even asking the coach. Because I think it's out of both of their hands. You know, even Terry Fontenot, he's in a compromising situation because like I ain't never dealt with nothing like this. So yes, Kevin, you got to move on for Ridley, which means you're gonna have they was preparing to give Ridley a big time contract extension. Do you use that on another free agent receiver that's coming up on another big deal, or do you address it in the draft as well and try to get a veteran?
Yeah, going to be an interesting decision there for Atlanta. We've got more to come. We'll talk Jags when we come back. John Shipley of the Jaguar Report will join us. Obviously, the Jags need players, but and they also need a head coach. He'll join us next. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you're making us a part of your day. As again, for all but just a handful of teams left in the NFL, it is full page towards the draft and the offseason here as it moves forward. The Jags own the number 1 pick in said draft. And joining us here from the Jaguar Report, John Shipley joins us here on 3 and Out. John, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, guys. How you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. Before we get to what the Jags need to address on the field in terms of player personnel, what's the latest with the head coaching situation? And obviously, there's probably some guys still coaching they'd love to talk to, but where are the Jags in terms of finding a guy to fill that Urban Meyer void and take over this franchise?
Yeah, no, this is a team that's definitely moving into, the next step in their, really the phase of the coaching search. They've done all the preliminary interviews. They've talked to the 9 candidates they, want to talk to, which, it's a list that it's a bit similar to some of the other teams, but they also have some guys on there that, other teams haven't talked to, guys like Darrell Bevel, guys like Bill O'Brien, but they also have some of the popular names, Matt Eberflus, Doug Peterson, Jim Caldwell, Nate Hackett, and Byron Leftwich. So I think the direction this is heading is we still have, I would say, probably another week to 10 days to go before we see anything really official or some major traction. But I think the list has been kind of weeded out to this point. I think you can presume guys like Bill O'Brien and Darrell Bevel are not going to get second interviews at this point. And I believe it's been reported so far, one guy who has gotten a second interview is Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, who's supposed to have his second one tomorrow. But then you look at some of their other guys who they are reportedly very high on, guys like Leftwich and Hackett, and those are guys that are still in the playoffs. So you can't exactly have that second interview yet. So I think as you see teams like Tampa Bay, like Green Bay, potentially drop off in the next week or two, I think that's when you'll see more kind of momentum on this job.
John, when you think about a guy like Byron Leftwich and obviously his rise through the coaching ranks and now being the offensive coordinator, in Tampa, how much is what he brings to the table a little bit different? Because these head coaches now, they got to be able to resonate with these quarterbacks. It's not one of those times where you got a guy that got experience but can't resonate with today's NFL quarterbacks or NFL players. How much does Byron Leftwich ability to have played the position, coaching coaching a guy like Tom Brady and bringing the type of experience should kind of give him kind of like be the leader of the pack right now?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely a great point. And to me, being a head coach, it's just as important your ability to communicate and build relationships to call plays and bring things from an X and O perspective. And to me, I'm not sure there are many candidates who are much better at that than Byron Leftwich. He's been known, dating back to even his playing career and now up to his time as a coach. He's an excellent communicator. He can relate to players, which is something the Jaguars last staff, specifically Urban Meyer, simply could not do. Urban Meyer did not know how to talk to NFL players. He didn't know how to relate to them. He didn't know how they think. Byron Leftwich knows exactly how they think because, he's been in the NFL for, almost 20 years now. Getting back to when he was drafted in 2003, outside those few years that he spent outside of it following his playing career. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the biggest allure with Leftwich is the fact that he's able to relate to players well and that we've seen him, construct his offense around several different quarterbacks. He's the guy. He's helped Jameis Winston and Tom Brady both find production and in vastly different offenses. So I think it's clear that he's the guy who will mold his offense around his quarterback, and that's what you want to see.
John Shipley, Jaguar Report, joining us here on 3 and Out. So obviously, I would imagine without a head coach, it kind of leaves all these mock drafts kind of as cute side stories for Jacksonville with the number 1 overall pick, but. John, is that really a free-for-all for Jacksonville, given how many different positions they could actually use a quality player at?
Yeah, no, I think, in an ideal world, especially in a class like this one where, the Jaguars took their quarterback last year, in an ideal world, move back from that pick, and get even more picks. They already have 12 picks, I believe, but almost half of those are in the 6th and 7th round. So the ideal scenario would be to, move back and fill more holes. It's just my question is, it takes 2 to tango. I'm not sure which teams are moving up to number 1 overall in this draft. I'm not sure if there's a player who is moving the needle enough for the Panthers to want to move up to number 1 from number 6. Like, I'm not sure if Kenny Pickett, Sam Matt Corral, Sam Howell. I'm not sure if any of those guys are really doing that. So I think it would be ideal for the Jaguars to, be able to have that kind of free for all and to have more options. But at this point, I'd expect them to end up picking at number 1.
When you think about what happened to Joe Burrow 2 years ago, and you see what happened this year by keeping him up right now, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he proved that obviously, he's very, very tough. I mean, I know he had that ankle injury and asked to come back into the game. Evan Neal, I mean, it's not ideal, but you want to be able to get a left tackle because you got Jawan Taylor, who's your bookend right tackle for the next at least a couple of years left on that rookie deal. I know you saying there isn't no surefire number 1, but left tackles are just like pass rushers. They are at a premium. Why not go with an Evan Neal who could potentially be your tackle for the next 10 years?
No, I think Evan Neal makes a lot of sense, and I think if they take Evan Neal, they could actually get creative with how they use him in terms of, you take an offensive tackle number 1, and everybody's expecting him to be, left tackle right away, blindside protector. I actually think if the Jaguars take Evan Neal, their best bet would be to play him at right tackle. Jawan Taylor, he's entering the last year of his rookie deal next season. He's had, really 2 back-to-back down seasons. After a strong rookie year, he just, he hasn't really developed. But on the other hand, at left tackle, they have a young tackle who, really showed terrific, steps in the right direction and traits last year. And Walker Little, number 45 overall pick last year, former number 1 overall offensive tackle group. This guy would have been a top 10 pick if it wasn't for, season-ending injury in 2019 and then COVID taking place in 2020, which led to him opting out. I truly believe we would have seen him as a top 10 pick. Instead, he fell to the second round, started 3 games for Jacksonville last year, and looked like one of the best rookie offensive linemen in the NFL when he did that. So I actually think the best bet if they were to take Neal would be play him at right tackle where he played last week, play Walker Little at left tackle, and then just trust that you have those 2 bookends to really, who are alien level athletes to really support Trevor Lawrence over the next 5-10 years of his career.
John, where's the talent level with this team? Because I know under previous regimes, you could say, well, the team's not very talented. The stories that were coming out during the year last year, hey, James Robinson's going to go in. No, you're not. Urban Meyer saying, no, you're not. You're not going to go back in. Is this team talented enough to improve greatly, and were they just misused? But where do you think the talent level on this team is right now?
I think they were maybe a little bit more talented than a team that went 3-14 and really didn't look competitive most weeks. But I also think, especially on the opposite side of the ball, this is a team that it just so badly needs an injection of playmakers. I think, by midseason, the Jaguars offense was one of the least dynamic, least explosive, and just simply slowest offenses in the NFL because, due to the roster move they made, in addition to an injury of DJ Chark, they had Laquan Treadwell, they had Tavon Austin, they had Jadon Mickens, they had all these guys playing legitimate heavy doses of snaps, and that's just not something you can do, really for a winning team in 2021. So I think on offense especially, I would say they simply are not talented enough right now. They need to get better at receiver. They need to get better at tight end. They have to replace several offensive linemen whose contracts starting to expire. And then running back has suddenly become a question mark because, James Robinson suffered a torn Achilles in week 16. You have Travis Etienne with the Lindstrength injury before his first official game. So I think you have more questions than answers, especially on offense. Then on defense, to me, the question is where are the blue chip talents that you're going to build around? I think Josh Allen could be one. I'm not sure he's one yet, but I think he could be. I think Tyson Campbell could end up being one. He had a really, really impressive second half of his rookie year, but then you have players like Shaquille Griffin, players like Miles Jack, players like Rayshon Jenkins, who are, NFL starters, but I'm not sure these guys that you really build defense around.
I mean, John, with all that being said, I mean, do you think they still go offense? You talk about these receivers with, Tavon Austin, Laquan Treadwell, guys that was like journeymen who were supposed to have big time careers, obviously end up become journeymen, in the league. You talking about Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, DJ Chark. Do they go out and get a couple of guys in the draft and also try to address it in free agency, or do they just say, look, man, we got to be able to kind of give Trevor, because Trevor Lawrence is proven I'm an okay quarterback with subpar talent. You give me some elite talent with hopefully a healthy Travis Etienne and maybe an offensive lineman outside of just, I don't know if they're ready to compete with Tennessee yet, but they could be competing for second in that AFC South.
I really think this is a job that whatever head coach takes it has to, potentially think maybe a Zach Taylor like trajectory, where, the Bengals for a year or two, they looked like, they maybe didn't get it right with Zach Taylor. They were losing games at such a high rate. And then year three, okay, his vision's finally come along, as they put pieces together. I think, I really do think they got quarterback right. I think Lawrence's rookie season was much better than the numbers indicate. And the numbers are abysmal. There's no denying that. But I think it requires a lot of context. But I just think, from offensive playmakers to defense to really instilling a culture that Urban and I are pretty a year behind, I still think this is a franchise that's a couple years away from making noise.
John Shipley, Jaguar Report, our guest here on 3 and Out. John, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Will do. John Shipley joining us here as the Jags, the owners of the number 1 pick, still need a head coach, Ben. And as he said, maybe a week to 10 days out from getting any kind of traction on that, as would appear, obviously, some of their more valued candidates still currently coaching in the NFL playoffs.
I hope that's the only reason why they haven't got it yet. I do hope that Byron Leftwich is the front runner. If he can't get a Jim Caldwell, either want to get a young guy that's up and coming like Byron Leftwich, who played the position, obviously understands because he played, got to coach guys like Tom Brady. But if you can't get a young guy, get a veteran guy like Jim Caldwell. Why Jim Caldwell won the 2 plays? He won with the Colts. Where is he to win? In Detroit. He won in Detroit, and I think that's something to say when you talk about a franchise that had been in the, I don't think they've ever come out of dark ages, and they've had Barry Sanders, they've had Megatron, but I do think Kevin, the quarterback head coach relationship is going to be important. But just like Atlanta, you got so many holes to fill. Where do you start first? I do think you start with O-line, and then you go with some wide receivers, later on in the draft. But they say they got all these picks, and most of them in the 5th or 6th round. I don't know how better you can make your team picking guys that low in the draft.
Yeah, going to be interesting watch there in Jacksonville to see how that all kind of turns out. We got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll step aside, and Ben sits down for this week's edition of Troop Talk with Eddie Rojas. He was the CEO of the Gator Collective, and one of many. I think you're going to hear more about organizations just like this all around college athletics. Ben and Eddie Rojas sit down next here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
this time.
Welcome back to Friend Out. I am Ben Troop. This is Troop Talk. Every week I sit down with one of the latest and greatest among us, and with everything going on in college football or college athletics, the new wave is NIL. That's the name and image likeness for those of you who don't know. And my next guest is, to me, he's leading the charge. Former Gator baseball pitcher extraordinaire, now CEO of the Gators Collective, the great Eddie Rojas. What's going on today, Eddie?
Hey, Ben, thank you so much for having me on.
Eddie, now, the one thing we try to do on this show, we try to be able to break down what's actually going on, but we try to speak to the experts. I know about SEC, ACC, SoCon, and Sun Belt football. When somebody asked me about the NIL, I said, listen, man, I'm partnering with the Gators Collective. I wanted to get the man, the man behind this entire NIL thing with Gators Collective. First, tell me what NIL is for people who are kind of like misconstruing what it is and why the Gators Collective.
Yeah, so NIL stands for Name, Image, and Likeness Law, and it's a law that recently passed. One of the great lawyers and Gator grads, Darren Heitner, helped produce this law in Florida, and other states have followed suit and made it legal for players to earn an income off their name, image, and likeness. Now, I use the word earn because unlike the old days where paying a player, was wrong and you couldn't do it under any circumstance, what name, image, and likeness has allowed players to have now is the ability to work just like you and I do and earn based on their name, image, and likeness. So if I'm a famous basketball player in college or I'm in gymnastics or a football player, and somebody wants to hire me to represent their pizzeria and they want me to do an ad, I can be on that commercial and I can be compensated no different than any other talent or person that's working. And so this is an exciting time in college sports because as a former Gator baseball player myself, I remember the days where I had to live off of what I was provided as a baseball player, and using my sport as a baseball player in particular, I was not a full scholarship athlete. So I had to find out, where I was going to get money to eat because I didn't necessarily have commissary on my scholarship. I might have had books and tuition, but my apartment might have not been being paid for, or my food. So this allows me as an athlete now to earn money outside my sport and to make an honest living and income while I'm in college. No different than any other college kid that can make a living as well as be a student.
Talking with Eddie Rojas, the CEO and founder of the Gators Collective, the new name and image likeness deals for current Gators at the University of Florida. Eddie, you talked about being able to have players, being able to work. For those people who don't know, when it comes to being a student athlete, the one thing we don't have is time. It's not as if the players don't want to work, but because their time is so limited, without an NIL type component being added to their schedule, they wouldn't have any means outside of maybe a Pell Grant, and that's dependent on their parents' income. They wouldn't have any means of getting any type of revenue, taking nothing away from the scholarship.
That's a great point. And as a matter of fact, we just are leaving football season now, going into some of the other sports. But during football season, we worked closely to get to know what the players' schedules were. So every Sunday at the Gator Collective, we want to be cognizant of their tedious schedule. And folks, if you're listening to this, the host, Ben Troop, he knows firsthand, it is a 7-day-a-week schedule as an athlete at Florida or at any of these great institutions that players are athletes at. And so what I like about the NIL, it's very specific on what the players can do with time. So at the Gator Collective, just so you guys that are listening know about us, we're a fan club. What we create is fan experiences with the players. So what we would do is get the player's schedule, and let's say we were doing a bowling event, which we actually happened to do during football season. We didn't want to get in the way of their workouts, their schoolwork, their football schedules, travel. So we would pick a day, call it Sunday afternoon, when we knew that week was over. They had Sunday off, and we had an event where we had 5 families who won the raffle. They got to spend the afternoon with 15 football players. They were, free drinks, free food, playing, bowling, just hanging out, getting to know them personally. But those are the types of events that we did that the players were compensated to do, which is exciting because the fans get to connect with the players. The players are earning an income, making sure that the fans ultimately, the customer summer, the fans are having a great time. So we did things like that they can earn money going to. We did a tailgate outside of a basketball game. So some football players went with some fans. Shannon Snell, another great Gator great who happens to own Sonny's Barbecue, he came out and made relationship ribs. You got fans and players eating together, hanging out. And I mean, it's just amazing. The fans would come back after these events and just rave. I cannot believe I had the opportunity to meet Derek Wingo or hang out with Anthony Richardson. We had Jervon Dexter calling a kid on Christmas morning. He got a new cell phone from his parents, and Jervon Dexter, he videotapes congratulations to the kid on getting his first phone, and you see the kid's face light up, and his brother comes running over. He's like, "Oh my goodness, it's Jervon Dexter," you know. And so, what a cool way for athletes to earn a living, just being with their fans and connecting with them. And that's what the Gator Collective is all about, bringing the fan and the athlete together for an exclusive experience. We're doing things even on Spaces on Twitter and podcasts and getting the opportunity to be part of shows with Ben Troop and things like that to get the fans to get to know the athletes better as well.
Talking with Eddie Rojas, CEO and founder of the Gators Collective. This is Troop Talk every week. And, sitting down with some of the greatest among us. And Eddie, it's something you keep harping on. I think hopefully the listeners are getting is sometimes the players don't understand just how much they mean to the people that support them, how much they mean to the people that cheer for him. You talk about the young man who got the cell phone. Jervon Dexter didn't never ever know that he would be able to do things like that. How much of the Gators Collective is more than just obviously them being able to have somewhere to work, but being able to show them, do your brand far away from the playing field?
Yeah, so from the player perspective, I mean, my goodness, I'm learning it. Like anything else, I said, we have a couple of slogans at the Gator Collective. One is stay aggressive. The other one is, we want to be more than just brokering the athlete to a business, right? A lot of NILs, a lot of name, image, and likeness companies work on the brokerage side. Get the fan with the company, right? Get the athlete with the company to represent the sneaker to the fan, right? We wanted to do more than that. We wanted it to be an experience, right? So we wanted to take the athlete, get the fan to know the athlete personally, and then also help craft the athlete. So this is the neat part. You guys are going to love this listening to this. We have PR professors at UF involved at the Gator Collective. They're doing seminars and opportunities for the athletes to learn how to brand themselves, how to when they get an opportunity to speak in public, how to present that. And so we're working with professors. We're working with CPAs to talk about the tax situation. As we all know, all adults know, right, that have been working for years, paying taxes is part of life. Well, who's going to help the athlete do that? So we're working with CPAs. We're working with financial advisors to discuss investing with the athlete. We had one of the athletes come to us and say, I'm really into real estate. I really want to learn about real estate. I'm from South Florida. Can you connect me with somebody in Gator Nation that might be part of real estate in that world? And then we're connecting them with a member of the fan club that owns a building company in South Florida. So it's doing a lot more than just even providing a job. It's creating a community and a culture that we want to create at Florida, which is when you become part of Gator Nation, this is a for life thing. We don't want you to play football here or baseball or basketball and then just go to the NFL or go do what you're going to do and just become another, face in the crowd. We want the people that are established to get to know you as well. And so the one thing I want to add to this is the cost. This is so cool. People can become part of the fan club for as little as $6 a month. Where I came up with that is every morning I drop my kids off at school. I go to a coffee shop and I buy my wife an iced latte, the large version of it. And they charge me $5.89 for an iced latte. And I started seeing people line up at this coffee shop, and there's 30 people in line waiting for a $6 coffee. And I started thinking in my head, if you can afford $6 a day for a coffee, and you're in this parking lot with a Gator license plate or a Gator logo, or you're wearing a Gator shirt, would you be willing to pay $6 a month to create an environment, an NIL opportunity at your favorite school for your favorite team and for favorite players. And if you add up hundreds of thousands of us doing $6 a month or whatever we can afford, we are going to be able to do amazing NIL opportunities for the athletes.
Eddie Rojas, CEO and founder of the Gators Collective, the name and image likeness that's going on right now. In Gainesville, trying to do all things for those Gator athletes there, men and women alike. And Eddie, the one thing I can say about partnering with you guys and working with you guys, when I think about something that I want to be able to help be a part of, when you talk about today's student athletes, for us, by us, for them, and you talk about being able to have the fan engagement, young men being able to come up to you and tell you about what they want to do in life past the playing field. The one thing I know the Gators Collective can do, it is getting these young student athletes to embrace who they were if this sport didn't exist, even though the sport is the vehicle pushing them through school. I think it's brilliant, man. I'm looking forward to working with you. I'm happy that you came up with it. Like I said, recruiting is one thing. Making sure these young people know they got a family that's wrapping our arms around them. As they say, it takes a village. I'm happy to be a part of the village, Eddie. I really, really appreciate you taking the time today, man. Obviously, we're going to be working with each other very closely, in the next coming years, man. I'm looking forward to it.
I really appreciate the platform, Ben. One thing I want to tell the audience, how do you become a member? You go to thegatorcollective.com, thegatorcollective.com, and you click commit now, and you can become a member of the Gator Collective just like that. And we open you up to some exclusive opportunities. We have big things planned for you. Thank you so much, Ben, for the opportunity.
I mean, thank you, Eddie, for coming on.
Good to have you here, 3 and Out. Ben, some breaking news here on this Thursday. It's Wednesday. I'm trying to make it Thursday. On this Wednesday afternoon involving the University of Georgia, Jermaine Burton, wide receiver, has entered the transfer portal. But wait, that's not it. More breaking news out of the University of Georgia. JT Daniels has entered the transfer portal. But wait
a minute.
There's still more.
Come on.
Stetson Bennett has said he is coming back to the University of Georgia to play another season. So within the last 30 to 40 minutes, little breaking news, Jermaine Burton is gone. JT Daniels is gone. Stetson Bennett, though, coming back.
Ooh, the band has definitely broke up. That leaves Carson Beck. I mean, you waiting to see what he's gonna do. But Stetson, we said, Kevin, I mean, he was a domino, right? Wherever he fell, would decide what happens. But JT Daniels realized, look, man, it's already a crowded room. I've done this for 2 years. I'm not gonna do it a third year. At least I get to add national champion to my resume before I move on. Jermaine Burton, the guy that was picked to do big things. Him and George Pickens going into the season. With George Pickens moving on to the National Football League, Jermaine Burton is saying, look, this ain't the offense that I thought it was gonna be. I have to defer to a freshman tight end by the name of Brock Bowers. I'm getting up out of here. And obviously, the Stetson Bennett decided saying, hey, man, I want to run it back one more again. I gave y'all 2 years. I gave you a natty. I want to try to win the SEC and the natty. Kirby, I will be back. It will be an open competition in the spring. Kevin, how different this team will look in 2022.
Yeah, a lot of guys going to the NFL, a lot of guys in the transfer portal. Got some big comebacks. I think Stetson, again, I will say for BJ's point, you bring it back a guy, even if, again, there's 5-star guys that are wanting to play. You bring back a guy that just led you to a national championship. That experience is worth something. Certainly coming back. Nolan Smith coming back.
Yep.
A lot of talk about Nolan saying, look.
The Smith brothers,
Yeah.
Smith is safety. You got Nolan Smith, you got Robert Beal. I mean, you got some big-time guys coming back. But JT Daniels is no longer in the red and black. Jermaine Burton say he's moving on. I mean, there's a team in Florida. If you're looking for, I'm just saying if you're looking for one. But no, Kevin, I mean, you knew it was going to be different. This happens on every championship team, whether it be college or pro. It's not going to be the same guys. And think about it, guys getting in the portal coming from Georgia trying to benefit from the fact that, hey, man, you just saw me on national TV being the last team standing. I could definitely help your ball club.
Yeah. And again, I think this is one of those where I think nobody is shaking the fact that they won a national championship. I think people look at it and go, you just won a natty. Why are you leaving? I think once you got that, now had Georgia lost again to Alabama, Ben, I don't know that this many guys would be transferring out. They might be coming back saying, look, let's run this back and try to do it again. But you have the natty and you get in that ring. And if you're Jermaine Burton, maybe you look around and go, man, I just thought I'd be a bigger part of the offense than I was. Didn't get as many touches as maybe I would elsewhere. I got my championship. That's what I wanted to do. Now it's me time. We say big team, little me. Now it's little team, big me.
You better get right.
I'm going to go put out a year of tape that gets me to the National Football League. And I think that's what certain guys are thinking when you see them transfer from successful programs. You're like, look, this guy was a starting wide receiver. Yeah, maybe didn't put up the numbers. And maybe even with George Pickens saying, I don't know if I'm going to get the targets that I want to potentially boost my profile. And that's the only thing I can say is why a guy like Jermaine Burton is transferred. Look, I'm going to go to a different offense where maybe I can get more looks, more touches, maybe make some more explosive plays. Not that he had a bad season. I think people would say he underachieved a little bit this year, but has the natty, can't take that away, and now go to a place where you can put up numbers.
Well, Kevin, I mean, the one thing that's always, is going to be supreme. You go to these colleges because, one, I want to have the team success, but I don't want to sacrifice my individual success in the process. That's why Jermaine Burton, JT Daniels, all these guys getting in the portal. But you got a bunch of guys, man, moving on to green the path. If you was on that defense, Trayvon Walker, Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, probably going to go on to the National Football League and be first-round picks with Nakobe Dean having the highest grade. But, yes, Burton, JT Daniels out, Stetson Bennett back. Carson Beck is saying, what the hell? We will see what happens in 2022.
Yeah, and again, so a little breaking news there. Jermaine Burton is gone. JT Daniels is gone. Both have entered the transfer portal, and who knows where JT is going to end up, Ben. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of schools that would take him right now.
Yes.
Walking in and say, hey, you're a former highly touted quarterback. Yeah, you didn't get to play that much at Georgia, but we'll take you right now and can come in and start day one. Stetson Bennett coming back, and a lot of people saying, all right, the Carson Beck watch is on now. If Stetson comes back with two very highly touted quarterbacks behind him, does Carson Beck kind of look at and read the room, so to speak, Ben, and say, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to get my chance. here to play at the University of Georgia the way I want to, other than 42-0 or something like that.
You hope that Carson Beck understands that, look, man, this might be his last chance, his best chance to finally go out there and get a team.
We've got so much to get to tomorrow. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com. Go to our YouTube page at ESPN Coastal and get the podcasted version of the show. We'll see you tomorrow, Thursday edition of 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.